Zoning Commission meeting of September the 2nd. Kathy, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Cazavan? Here. Mr. Lauren?
Here.
Mr. Hines? Mr. Richard?
Here.
Mr. Willie?
Here.
Mr. Matthews?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Manella?
Here.
Mr. Drum?
Here.
Mr. Randolph?
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Announcements, phones and pagers, please put them on vibrate or turn them off. Appeals, if you disagree with a decision this commission makes, you can file an appeal. The cards are over to my right on the railing, and turn those into staff, and that'll be appealed to the council. Speaker cards, if you wish to speak on any of the items on the agenda, please complete one and turn it into staff. They will get it up here to us. Each side will have 10 minutes on each of the cases with a 5-minute rebuttal. After the case is heard, please exit the building. Don't try and have a conversation. Please rise for the invocation by Mr. Randolph and the pledge by Mr. Davis.
Gracious Father, once again, we'd like to thank you for watching over us and allowing us to enjoy a fulfilling and wonderful Labor Day weekend. Throughout this day, you led, God, and protected us, kept us from all hurt, harm, and danger. We thank you for this commission. And we allow, Lord, but please allow us to make decisions that's in the best interest of the citizen, the parish, and council. In all these blessings we ask in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next item is the approval of minutes of the August the 5th meeting, and I believe we have some changes that need to be made. Mr. Matthews, I believe, or Mr. Davis?
Yes. I have some changes to be made on the minutes from last month. On postponing of cases, the second case, we're missing my yay vote on that one. And under the zoning change request cases, from the 4th to the 14th, 4th through the 14th, we're missing my yay votes in those as well. And if I recall, I was here at the time.
All right.
So that's a make a motion. I'll make a motion for those changes then to approve if anybody else has a comment.
Okay.
Second with the changes.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as corrected. Any further comments on it, Mr. Richard?
Mr. Chairman, in addition, while I would have liked to have voted on these items, I was absent the last meeting, so on the approval of the July 1 meetings, shows me as voting for them. We need to remove that.
Okay. Thank you.
That's July, yeah.
Mr. Davis, you had anything else?
No, that's all, thank you.
Okay. All right, please vote. All right, motion carries of the minutes as corrected. Thank you. Staff, we have some cases that need to be postponed, I believe, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Chairman. Number 11 on the agenda, ZC 14-09-084, and the representative is in the audience to represent the owner and the petitioner, and they would like to address the zoning commission.
Okay. And any other one?
Yes, the next one is going to be CP 07-09-157 PR, and the owner is here as well to address the zoning commission.
Okay. All right, sir. There was a gentleman come forward. There he is.
Hey, Dave.
Please state your name and,
William McGee on behalf of Darling Design Homes, Inc., the representative. spoken to Mr. Groby, and he informed me that there is opposition to the proposal, and rather than move forward, we'd like the opportunity to meet with the people who are opposed so we can give them correct information about the intent of the developer and the impact on their community, and try to work with them as best we can. So we'd like to ask that that be tabled.
Okay?
And could those who are opposed to that particular case, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Several others here.
I'd like to meet with whoever's willing to meet with us out in the hallway.
No, you need to state to the chair here so that we get it on tape right, okay? So what's your intent now? You want this postponed?
Table, that's correct.
Okay, all right, and we have, how many people here that are here for this case? We've got a large number. And I'm gonna ask the people that are here, I think Mr. McGee's, offering to have a meeting with you, outside this, chamber, and maybe come back at next month, if that's something that y'all would be willing to do. Is there anyone here that's gonna be a spokesman for this group?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Charles Lesh. I am one of the several people who would like to speak tonight. Obviously, we have a large group of people here who would like to make our wishes known. Postponing it to another date would be an inconvenience for quite a number of people.
Okay, I mean, it's, if we have, that many folks here that are not willing to have it postponed, we can hear it. Now, it could go either way, so I'm not gonna, suggest to you that it's not gonna go, for the way of the petitioner or the way of those opposed.
Right, sir. Well, I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, if we might have a caucus of our group outside and decide what we would like to do.
You can do that, we can postpone it, till later in the meeting, okay? If that's, all right with you, we'll do that.
If we
But
could,
don't go out in the lobby, you need to go on out in the heat, I'm sorry,
I understand. Thank you very much, sir.
okay?
Mr. Chairman, since it's almost the last one on the agenda, would we need to postpone it? Or just, it's,
I'd rather postpone it, Martha, and that way, if we get down to it, and they're not back in here, then we already have an action on that particular item. And
If they
it's no
decide to
problem to
move
bring
it
it back off the table. Is that all right?
yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, you're looking for a
Like-
motion to postpone it to next month?
No,
Or a motion to move it to the end of the calendar?
move it to
Move
the end of the calendar,
End of the agenda,
end of the agenda.
okay? I move to move ZC 1409084 to the end of the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion. A second by Mr. Randolph. Please vote on the motion to move this item to the end of the agenda.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
With this many people here and with the developer being willing to offer to talk with everybody, I don't know if it's a good idea just to do it at the end of the night. Maybe it might be better to have a community meeting signed up for the developer and the rest of these people in the upcoming week, which I'll be glad to go ahead and present myself for that if that's possible, if everyone's in agreement with that.
Well, I believe that they had indicated, if I, read the folks in the audience correct, that they're not willing to postpone for another month.
Well, not to postpone for a month, but we could hold a community meeting next week or something, and we have it lined, have it professionally.
But it wouldn't be heard, Jimmy, until another month.
Oh, okay. So y'all willing to go ahead and go at the end of the month,
I
end
think
of
that's
this
what they're
meeting,
going
is
to
that correct?
discuss.
Well, my objective, sir, was to try to get kind of a consensus. I'm only one of quite a number of people who are
Okay,
here.
okay.
And I can't say that I speak for everybody.
Right.
So I was kind of hopeful that we might be able to have a short meeting amongst ourselves and decide what the group would like to do. My main objective was to avoid the inconvenience of this large group having to come back again at any time.
Okay,
Be it
that's
next
fine then.
week or next month or any other time.
All right, well, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to postpone to the end of the agenda. zoning case 14-09-084. We have a vote on it, and the motion carried. I'm sorry, Dave?
No, I was just going to ask a point of information in that staff recommended postponement, the petitioner recommended postponement. We took comments, and now we're going to vote to put it somewhere else on the agenda as compared to either A, we agree to postpone it, B, we agree not to postpone it and hear it.
Well, the majority of the folks here in the audience, okay, have asked that it be postponed to the end of the agenda, that they're not willing to, or don't want to come back next month and hear this. And I'm just trying to accommodate those that are here, Dave.
So, all right, so what we're doing is to amend the agenda and to place this as the last item on the agenda.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The motion carried 9-0. Thank you. All right. On page 3, we have under old business, CP07-09-157 PR. I'm gonna hold up just a minute and let these folks,
Good evening.
Sir.
I'm the next. My name is Sam
Let me
Malkovich.
get these, let the folks get out of here, and then we'll go forward. All right, now here we go. We got, under old business, CP 07-09-157 PR, use retail facility over 20,000 square foot. The zoning is HC2 Highway Commercial District. The use size is 99,045 square feet. Petitioner is Samuel Markovich, Acadian Properties North Shore LLC. The owner is Samuel Markovich, Acadian Properties North Shore LLC. Parcel located on the west side of Louisiana 21, south of Cherokee Rose Lane, Ward 1, District 1. This was, according to staff, are you Mr. Markovich?
Yes.
Okay, and it's my understanding that you have requested that this be postponed until next month?
Yes, please.
Okay. We have a couple of folks that had asked to speak on this, but since you're the petitioner and requesting that it be postponed, let's see, we've got a Lisa Dunaway and a Dwayne Mish. Okay, is it all right with you folks that we postpone this until next month?
Yes, sir, I would like to address the council, please.
No.
If it's gonna be postponed till next month, then it really wouldn't need to be addressed at this point in time.
Would it be, I mean, I know the petitioner is requesting, Dave, but it's still up to us, and we have done this before. There are other people that we hear, and if we do hear the opposition, that we go forward with the case?
Well, we can do that, but I mean, we usually try and accommodate the petitioner
Yes, but,
as much as we can, Martha.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to postpone, and then we can hear arguments on the postponing,
Okay.
not arguments on the merits, but I think we might want to hear arguments on the motion to postpone, if I could get a second.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to postpone, but listen to the arguments either for or against postponing before a vote is taken. Please vote on that.
No.
Motion to postpone.
We need to hear arguments
Okay.
on the postponing
All right.
before we vote.
All right, I got you. All right. All right, Mr. Markovich. Let's see, we got.
No, you might want to tell us why you want to postpone.
Well, the case is a complicated case that involved DOT. attorneys, and he just called me at 4 o'clock to let me know that he is not prepared. He has other things that he was scheduled to appear for, and he couldn't make it. So he asked me to ask you to postpone it for next month.
Okay, I'm not sure I heard all that.
The DOT is involved in this case.
Okay?
There is an outstanding lawsuit, and he has to be here.
Who is he?
The attorney representing the DOT.
Okay.
I might be able to provide some insight on this. I know that the 50-foot buffer that was taken over by DOT when they did the expansion of the road, and now you're having a little bit of difficulty to meet the PCO buffer. Is that
That-
basically what it comes down to?
That's correct.
Okay, so the reason for the request for postponement is DOTD would like to be here to address this, for whatever
Correct.
That's what I
information they
understand
can
from Mr.
provide
Markovich.
and help. Okay?
Correct.
That kind of satisfies me. I don't know about the rest of us.
Okay, let's see,
Look, hear arguments against it.
Mr. Meach? I'll just hear from you as to why you don't want us to postpone it till next month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mostly, we just want to have some clarification, some understanding, and maybe some direction in which we need to follow as a neighborhood. My name's Dwayne Mesh. I live at 318 Cherokee Rose Lane. That's part of Timber Branch subdivision, which backs up to this piece of property. First, let me say, we are not opposed to any growth and development for the parish of St. Tammany. We understand the importance of that. But what we want to make known is that we want that to be good growth and not growth that impedes upon the residents that live in Timber Branch subdivision, mostly being the drainage. For nearly a year ago, there was massive amounts of dirt brought into this piece of property. None of the residents there really knew what was going on. We assumed the parish had an
We
understanding.
need to stay on the postponement, of, this particular case, and you're wanting to get into the specifics of the case, which we can't do right now.
Okay. Well, if you could give me some direction, sir, that's where we want to go, is the drainage aspects. Once it's developed, we want to make sure that the drainage is done correctly and it drains to 21 and not more water back onto our property in Timber Branch. So we really need some direction from you.
Okay, Helen, I'm gonna suggest that he get with y'all in engineering.
Yes, and actually, sir, if you, I don't know if you have a copy of the new plans that have been submitted.
No, ma'am, we do
Okay.
not.
If you wish, I can give you a copy.
Yes, ma'am.
Right now, just a moment.
Lisa Dunaway?
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Thank you.
Okay,
Call the question.
all right. So the motion is to postpone until next month. CP 07-09-157 PR. Please vote. Motion carries to postpone. Thank you. Mr. Markovich, you might also want to, get names and phone numbers so that y'all can have some discussion among you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
On the agenda, I think it might be appropriate to move the ordinance changes to the end of the agenda. And I would move that we take all of the, I think it's 3 ordinance changes, and move those to the end of the agenda.
You actually got 4, Bill.
4? Okay, look, 4 of them.
Okay. All right, so your motion is to move zoning case 1408-075, zoning case 14-09-076, zoning case 1409-077, and then on page 3, we have a text change, zoning case 1409-085 to the end of the agenda, and here are all the rest of the cases.
Yes, please.
Okay? We have a motion. Do I hear a second? seconded by Mr. Richard. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Back to the agenda now. On page 1, item 1, zoning case 08-01-007, major amendment to a PUD, planned unit development overlay, an addition of 22.30 acres of planned unit development overlay. It's 74.23 acres plus adding 22.30 acres makes a total of 92.6. No, that doesn't add up. Anyway, the size is 92.61. Petitioners Gulf States Real Estate Services LLC, the owners Versailles Land LLC, and Lucky 7 Irrevocable Trust partial located on the north of I-12 west of Holiday Square Boulevard, south of Versailles subdivision, Ward 3, District 5. District 5, yeah. Staff?
The petitioner is requesting a major amendment to the originally approved PUD and the addition of 22.30 acres. The commercial subdivision is now proposed to be developed with a total of 20 lots and was originally approved to be developed as with a total of 23 lots. The lots are identified on the plan by 3 different colors representing the maximum height allowable for each area. Note that the maximum allowable height in Area 2 is proposed to be between 40 and 60 feet, and the rear yard setback have been adjusted according to the maximum height allowable within area by taking into consideration that a portion of Area 2 is directly abutting Versailles residential subdivisions. At this time, staff would like to recommend approval of the major amendment to the PUD as well as the addition of 22.3 acres.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Before we get into this, the councilman for this area has indicated that he would like to see this postponed because several years ago, this piece of property was the subject of a great deal of negotiation and give and take between the developers and the surrounding homeowners. And now that it's, there's a request to change it, the homeowners in the area are confused and aren't quite sure what's going on and would like to have a community meeting to discuss it. And at that point, hopefully to revise any questions, answer any questions, revise any difficulties, and probably work this out. But they would like to have a community meeting, and the councilman has asked for that to be done, and I would move that we do that.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second that.
How many
and a
people,
second.
how many people are here tonight on it?
Pardon me?
How many people are here tonight that are opposed to it or want to find out about it?
On this particular one, this is item 1 on the
Right.
page 1 of the agenda. Zoning case 08-01007. This is the Versailles subdivision. How many people are here on that particular case?
So,
I don't see anyone, Martha.
but the councilman wants to meet with these people that aren't, I mean,
Well, he
The
probably
councilman, yeah, the councilman has asked for us to have a community meeting so that he, the commission, the homeowners, and the developer can meet and discuss lots of questions that they all have. And I guess maybe he has already told them that this would happen, which they often do. But in any case, I think it is appropriate to do, since this was the subject of a great deal of negotiation in the past, and we would like to, again, see if we can renegotiate any questions or problems that the homeowners have. And that's my motion, to postpone it and hold a community meeting.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, Mike Soche, Gulf States Real Estate. I'm here representing 3 groups. It's the group who got the first PUD approved. This is incredibly astounding to me, since we have met with the councilman 2 months ago. He had no issues with the project. We also had a few homeowners or the representatives show up at the previous meeting, which I was unable to attend because I was out of town. We have offered, we've sent them information, we've offered to meet with them on numerous occasions, and no one has contacted us. And this is the first time I'm hearing about a community meeting, questions, problems. due to the fact that, frankly, what we're requesting is not very elaborate. So I'm highly disturbed by that situation, and just frankly don't understand it. And again, there's not even one here representing the homeowners association to indicate that. I've not received a phone call from Mr. Gould, who's a councilman in this area, and we postponed this project once. The only reason for the postponement was there was some confusion because of the staff recommendation changing maybe a week or so before the meeting, and the only change that was made by the staff due to the recommendation was the fact that we were missing sidewalks and pedestrian access ways through the project, which I met with Ms. Lambert and we addressed, and the issue of the additional setback to go to the higher buildings because we had larger lots, which we addressed. And I told my group, Mr. Jason Riebert, that if there were any questions, we were willing to postpone. But now we're going to be 90 days into this process. We have people wanting to buy lots in this subdivision, and I frankly don't understand.
Mr. Soche, all I can tell you is that the councilman has contacted me and told me that he has received numerous phone calls and has talked to people and thinks that the best way to do this is with a community meeting. He has suggested it. It made sense to me at the time. It still makes sense to me because of the things that are changing in the project, and I stick by my motion.
Okay. Ms. Casabon?
I agree. I don't think I've ever seen a community meeting this late in the process on the things that, I did have questions last month when we were talking about the height of the buildings because I knew how close this was to the Versailles subdivision, but I think those questions have been answered. I don't understand it either. I just want it noted that I don't understand having it postponed or a community meeting at this point in the planning of this.
Okay.
And then the fact that there's nobody here, whether Mr. Gould took it upon himself to tell the community, I'm having it postponed. I would like to hear it and make a decision. And if that doesn't like our decision, he can appeal it, or they can appeal it for the 10 days. But I've never seen it in the process this late.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to postpone until next month's meeting, and then during the interim, have a community meeting with Mr. Gould and the residents.
And members of the commission.
Pardon?
And members of the commission.
And members of the commission.
Pardon, Chair. I'd like to withdraw my motion to a second.
Okay.
I just think with nobody here from the Versailles subdivision, I'm a little concerned about why nobody showed up with that, so I withdraw my motion to second the motion.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor without a second. Do I hear a second? I do not hear a second, so the motion fails for lack of a second. So we will go forward hearing the case.
Just for the record, I'd like to present this to Ms. Lambert. This is an email regarding the numerous times we've contacted the homeowners group to meet with them, and also that we initially met with Mr. Gould. He thought the changes we were making were so minuscule that a meeting with the Versailles Homeowners Association was probably not necessary. So I stand by that. I went over previously what happened last month. I'd just like to review the case, and we had some time, obviously, to put together a more illustrative package of what's going on here. Again, the Versailles PUD was primarily a Class A office park. It included buildings that ranged from 40, 60, and 100 feet in height. We were instrumental in developing the Holiday Square Boulevard extension from the theater that now goes into this area and dead ends at the back of the Honda of Covington facility. And that project has done very well. As a matter of fact, there's an automobile deal that it just bought.
Let me stop you right there. I've kind of broken sequence here. I need to get the staff report, and then I will come back to you. Helen?
Thought we had that.
Do you have a staff report on this?
Mr. Chairman, we did the staff report. Oh, well, I'll be happy to present it again. The petitioner is requesting a major amendment to the PUD of the originally approved PUD and the addition of 22.3 acres. The commercial subdivision is now proposed to be developed with a total of 20 lots. The lots are identified on the plan by 3 different colors representing the maximum height allowable in each area. I'd like to note that the maximum allowable height in Area 2 is proposed to be between 40 and 60 feet. The rear yard setback have been adjusted according to maximum height allowable within Area 2 by taking into consideration that a portion of Area 2 is directly abutting Versailles residential subdivision. At this time, staff would like to recommend approval of the major amendment to the PUD and the addition of 22.3 acres.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So continuing, when we had an interested party contacted us regarding property in this area, and that led to us looking at this development even further. As a matter of fact, as y'all know, this is probably one of the most important corners in St. Tammany Parish. It's not the entrance to Mandeville, but it is the entrance to St. Tammany Parish. The second drawing I have shows the extent of the project. The project boundaries in yellow were the original PUD. You also see the old roadway configuration with a dead end or cul-de-sac, large cul-de-sac road. You see the new proposed roadway configuration, which builds a road to somewhere versus a road to nowhere. You also see in red the additional acreage that is owned by not only Lucky 7 Trust, but also the Versailles Group. That land was and now can be, was a very dysfunctional, landlocked piece of dirt that was sandwiched between the shopping center and the overside PUD. And we came up with this idea, which we think is a good one, and so does the administration, to actually continue Holiday Square Boulevard and tie it into Holiday Boulevard so that you have 2 ways in and out of the project. And again, we don't build a dead-end road, we build a functional road that provides multiple ingress and egress points. Last but not least, you'll see a green an area outlined in green. Since we were involved in the development of the 30 or 40 acres there where Holiday Boulevard, Square Boulevard is, the Global Star Building, the Hilton Garden Inn and Suites, and we have a very good relationship with most, if not all, of the commercial property owners in green. It is our hope and our intention that once this project's improved, to create a development district that includes the area in green and have it managed collectively, possibly have the shopping center redeveloped. It's frankly, the theater's been redeveloped and it looks a lot better, but the shopping center could use some work. And have this be an icon, have this be the center of gravity for business in St. Tammany Parish. So that map again shows the work that we hope to accomplish there. The second drawing is the old PUD, just for reference purposes. It had 3 different height limitations on buildings. It had 40, which is the orange or the light orange. It had 60, which was the yellow, and it had 100, which was the blue. The next drawing is our proposed PUD. Obviously, why are we requesting 60-foot buildings? Because the lots got much larger. And I'll show you in the further illustrations here where we have tried to design this project around very successful developments, Las Colinas, parts of Houston that have mid-rise suburban office within this type of environment. And again, as I mentioned, the sidewalk is shown in red on that drawing. We do expect to add other amenities as this project comes to fruition. But in addition to the 100-foot green belt that was agreed upon, no cut, no clear, it was agreed upon years ago when the original Versailles PUD was approved, we have, the staff suggested and we have agreed to provide up to an additional 100-foot buffer of setback. We would leave the 100-foot no cut, no clear where it is, but if we built a building of 60 feet in height, we would move it further from the property line, another 100 feet from the property line for a 200-foot setback. And that is best illustrated on this drawing here, where our architect took and basically did a line of sight showing what the line of sight would be from the back of a home or someone's back window. They could never see a building of 100 feet if it was set back that far. and if we did the 60-foot building right at 110 feet. Why 110 feet versus 100 feet? Well, right up against the no cut, no clear, originally, and we believe today that's still true, you need at least 10 feet of working area so you don't impact so there would be the 100-foot no cut, no clear, there would be 10 feet of grass or shrubbery or whatever, then the parking lot would start if a 60-foot building was constructed. The last drawings that I have or photos that I took, actually, the reason I couldn't make the meeting, I was in Dallas on business and took some photos of buildings. Roughly, an office building, a Class A office building needs about 15 feet per floor. If you look at 10-foot building, possibly a 10-foot ceiling height, you need room for ductwork and electrical and things above that, and then you have your floor area. So roughly 15 feet. So a 60-foot building is going to roughly handle a 4-story building. That's what's shown here on the NSN corporate office that I took a photo of. And a 100-foot building is roughly about a 6-story building. And I took several photos of some buildings that are in that range. If any of y'all been out to Las Colinas, you've seen there's probably 50 or 60 of these buildings that have been constructed. So this is an illustration of what we're trying to accomplish here. Many people that come to St. Tammany that we do business with from out of town sometimes ask me, where's town? Where's downtown? And right now it's kind of all over the place. And what we hope to do with this corner, including the area in green, and additional work that may occur there, and I expect to be in front of y'all, hopefully, at some point in time, redeveloping the area in green, that this important corner become a center of gravity for St. Tammany, and this is the last piece of land to do that at this key intersection. We are not touching anything on the property. We have not changed one thing on the property that extends down the interstate toward the west. That is the area on our new PUD plan that is in yellow. That stayed the same. We believe that this, if you look at these photos of these buildings, the other benefit of going higher is if you look at some of these buildings I've taken pictures of, they have a lot of green space around the building. They go vertical, but they're allowed. We don't have the urban sprawl of having to squish everything down. And because these lots got larger, we felt it was appropriate to do that and give the additional buffer that we've added to the project. Again, lastly, this solves a lot of problems for several property owners in the area, particularly Lucky 7 Trust that was frankly landlocked. There is litigation between private property owners that involve these landlocked issues here that this project will resolve, and our purchase of the property and development of the property will dissipate. And we would appreciate your consideration for approval. We're ready to finish up our plans and specs and go through the subdivision process. We will have to go through the subdivision process because which would allow for additional comments and input from the residents regarding drainage and traffic and those issues, which are on the heels of this. And but we have 2 lots, actually 3 lots under contract presently, and there is time pressure to get this done. So
Okay.
here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sochet. I'll go back and ask one more time, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this either for or against? We're hearing for right now. I see no one coming forward or raised a hand, so I'm going to close the floor to the public and bring it back to the commission. Mr. Randolph, you have your light on.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sochet, I'm referring to, first of all, very nice package.
Thank you.
I'm looking at photo shot number 2 and referencing also to photo shot page 5. Would you explain again the faded, small, thin yellow line on photo shot number 2 in reference to Holiday Square and the loop on page 5? And maybe you have already, and if you have, forgive me, I'd just like you to reiterate.
Not a problem. This, the dashed yellow line, which created this loop road in here where you could only come in and go out one way, was approved in the old PUD. And our proposal is to extend Holiday Square Boulevard through the development, tie it in at this location here with Holiday Boulevard, so that there is, if you live in Folsom and you would work in this office park, you can come in the north gate. If you coming from New Orleans or you're coming from Mandeville and you work here, you can come in the south gate. It's very attractive to have two ways in. You see us now in St. Tammany Parish fighting dead-end roadways, roads that go, this provides for a natural progression of traffic and distribution of traffic as opposed to the other route.
And as a follow-up, on page 5, on Photoshop page 5, will that ingress, egress cut into some of your property or some of the lots or some of the area?
I know this, the road actually goes to here right now and stops. And so we would be connecting to the end of the current right-of-way. That right-of-way is 80 feet in width. Our right-of-way is 80 feet in width. And just continuing that on north. So instead of, I guess from a traffic standpoint, you would call the old road a local road. You can call this road a collector road. It's a step higher. It provides more benefit to even the general public. For instance, if there was an accident at Holiday Boulevard by the Clarion Hotel and 190, which happens from time to time, residents in Versailles or businesses could hop on this road, go south through the development, go back up to the southern traffic light, and access Causeway Boulevard or Highway 190. So, and last but not least, we are very busy in the office sector right now. We're constructing a new office in our park, and we're running out of space at 1077 and I-12. We're getting ready to build another 30,000 square foot office building in that same vicinity for another corporate client. But what we envision here and what we see from our work in Houston and Dallas from out of town is that this is where the market is going, that there needs to be a park with larger lots. There's a lot of small office lot availability in the St. Tammany parishes right now. These lots in the 5 to 7 acre range in a Class A environment are pretty limited.
All right, Ms. Casabon.
Yes, we've been looking at this a long time, and it was a big problem. About the access, the one way in, the one way out, that this plan looks great to me, that it's satisfying and it's bringing in for the future, this close to the interstate, something that we need, this type buildings, and to bring in more businesses and things. I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Casabon to approve. I had a second down here to my left. I don't know. Ron, you second that? Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I have one question. These 3 lots, instead of the 6 lots that go from 40 to 60 feet, realistically, how many of those lots are going to have 60-foot buildings, in your opinion?
On the new plan,
Yes. All 3, correct?
very likely,
Okay.
very likely. But
But you offset that with the additional 100-foot space?
we just don't know.
Okay, no, it's a pretty good plan, pretty good plan. Thank you.
If you look at the lot configuration on the south side of Holiday Square Boulevard, where you see where we've, like for instance, lot 17 and 20, that could be one lot, but we show it as 2 because frankly, we've had interest from the people who bought the lot to the south to expand. That gives us the ability to, if we have to, but again, we'll have to set it away from the property line to larger buildings on the left side of the road. And If you look at the old plan and you look at the 200-foot setback, those buildings would be located very near where the old yellow swatch of lots were. Remember, we had orange lots that were 40, we had yellow lots that were 60, and we had blue, I guess it was blue that was 100. If you look at where these buildings would actually located on the face of the earth, they're going to be very close to where the 60-foot buildings were on a GPS point based on this plan, given the 200 feet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sochay.
Thank
Tim,
you.
got any further? All right, Bug?
Mike, I have one question, and I'm not sure I'm reading this map, all these schematics exactly right. But if you look at this one,
Okay?
okay?
That one's a little tough to
Pardon?
read. It's a little tough to read, that's why I didn't spend a lot of time on it.
All right.
It is an overlay of the old PUD and the new PUD with colors, and it frankly didn't come out too well. You'll see some shading, and you see gray. Well, where's gray on the plan?
Well, my
So,
question has to do with what we've run into here a lot lately is when somebody comes in and all of a sudden there's a piece of property that's too small really to develop, but it's in a commercial area.
mhm.
That area, that little purple area that's just to the east of Lot 9, you see that little rectangular place that's between Lot 9 and Holiday Square Boulevard, the new one?
Let me make sure I'm looking at the same map. Okay. Lot 9. Yes, okay. Lot 9. Well, again, that map, I wish we wouldn't have included it in here. It is confusing because it shows the old lot lines, the new lot lines. That little piece of property that is shown in gray or blue that's on the left side of the road, that will be absorbed into new lot 9. So we will not have any small dysfunctional lots that
That's what I was
don't
getting
meet
at.
the minimum zoning
So
requirement.
that's going to be absorbed into Lot 9?
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Please vote. We're waiting for the computer to clear. All right, now vote. Okay, all right, we've got it now. We had 8 yeas and 1 nay, so motion carries. Thank you, Mike. Bill, if, this can always be appealed to the council, and they'll have time to have a community meeting, so,
Thank you, gentlemen.
okay, all right. Thank you. All right. Mr. Matthews, I want to ask you and Mr. Davis, looks like we've got all the folks back in the chambers here on page 3, 157, the conditional use permit. If y'all would like to move that up
What,
and hear it.
for what? It's on the, but they're last on the agenda. So before these?
Okay, that's fine. Don't have a problem with it. All right, let's see, we postponed to the end of the meeting, item 2, 3, 4. So we'll go to page 2, and it'll be item 5, zoning case 14-09-078. Existing zoning is A2 Suburban District. The proposed zoning is ED1 Primary Education District. It's .886 acres. The petitioner is Amanda Dean. The owner is Whitney Bank. Parcel located on the south side of Hickory Drive, west of Louisiana 41, Ward 6, District 11. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. Note there is an existing commercial structure on the site which was previously operated as a daycare under a conditional use permit given in 2006. It appears that the requested zoning is an attempt to bring the existing structure into compliance with the appropriate zoning district in order to resume operation. Staff does not object to the requested zoning and recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. State your name and address. I don't have a speaker card on.
Francisco Dean, 2929 Camellia Drive in Slidell.
Amanda Dean, 2929 Camellia Drive.
Okay, I want to ask you to fill out a speaker card after you finish. Do you have some comments for the commission?
We're the proposed owners.
Okay, all right. All right. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews.
I have a question for the deans.
Yes.
Why don't you come back up to the podium, please? Is this currently being operated as a daycare?
No.
Okay, so your conditional use permit has expired, is that part of the problem?
Not ours, the previous owners.
Previous owners,
Yes, sir.
conditional use.
Correct.
And you would, again, like to have a daycare there?
Correct.
Okay, and it appeared to me that this piece of property is several hundred feet off of Hickory Drive, is that correct?
Correct.
Kind of sitting out there all by its lonesome self. It looks like this certainly as a daycare, no matter how much noise the kids made, it wouldn't upset anybody except you all.
Yes, sir.
It looks like it would be a great place to have a daycare. You kids can run and you'll have a heck of a time chasing them. I'd move to approve.
Thank you, sir.
We have a motion by Mr. Matthews to approve. Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Drum. Any further discussion? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, Mr. Dean, you're looking at just making the actual building itself 81, correct?
That's correct.
Out of
Yes,
the
sir.
entire 4.64 acres?
No, just the, correct, just out of the 4.6, just, I think it's 0.88 acres.
Right, and where are the kids gonna, are the kids gonna be young kids, where they're gonna let them outside, or what?
I'll let my wife answer that because she's.
They do have a fenced-in area that will be the play area for the children, so they are allowed outside. And the age range would be from 6 weeks old to 4 years of age.
The fenced-in area, is that included in this .886
Yes.
acres?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there's no way for the kids to get to the pond?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, zoning case 14-09-079. Existing zoning is HC2, Highway Commercial District. Proposed zoning is HC2A, Highway Commercial District. It's 1.7 acres. The petitioner is Matt Bennett, owner BB Mini Storage INC, parcel located on the east side of US Highway 190, south of Kane Lane, being 7037 Highway 190, Covington, Ward 4, District 5. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with commercial uses. The requested zoning change to HC2A would not allow for more intense uses on the site. However, it would allow for an increase in the maximum building size from 40,000 square feet to 75,000 square feet. Considering the size of the site, staff does not have any objections to the request and recommends approval.
Thank you. Mr. Maroon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Maroon on behalf of BB Mini Storage Incorporated. Parcel this evening is 1.7 acres. It's located along the Highway 190 service road, as your staff report noted, just south of Judge Tanner Boulevard and the Fairway Drive exit. The property is currently used for a Liberty Mini Storage facility. That use is proposed to continue. The reason for the request, though, is that there is a desire on behalf of the owners to convert two of the buildings on that site, to tear those down and to bring back an upgraded facility which will be all climate controlled and will be one single building. The property is currently zoned HC2. We're proposing HC2A, and the sole purpose for the request is the limitation on the building square footage in the HC2 zone. As the staff noted, under HC2, there's a maximum building square footage of 40,000 square feet. We're proposing just under 70,000 square feet in one building to replace those two buildings I mentioned before. It's important to note that in all other respects, the HC2A zone is identical to the HC2 zone. In other words, there are no additional permitted uses in HC2A. The height limitation is the same, 35 feet. The lot coverage is the same, 50%. The only characteristic that changes is the square footage allowed in a single building. And obviously, that's why we're here this evening. There are 3 points I'd like to make with regards to that request. First, staff report pointed out that we're dealing with a finite area of land here. We're only talking about 1.7 acres. So changing this to HC2A does not open Pandora's box. There's only so much room available. There is an existing facility on the site which we're simply going to be upgrading. In addition, this is an area that I would submit to you is compatible for HC2A. One, last month you all saw 2 cases very similar to this just north of this property on the north side of the interchange where you took properties from HC2 to HC2A. Just to the south along this service road there are numerous HC3 properties. So there's a good bit of HC2 in the area. There's HC2A to the north and HC3 to the south. Finally, I want to point out to you that when we talk about the square footage limitation, we're not talking about limiting the square footage on the site. We're talking about the square footage in a given building, and I think that's important. And I'll illustrate it this way. If the commission were to decide not to grant the HC2A, it doesn't mean that we can't have 70,000 square feet of new buildings on this property. What it means is we have to build 2 buildings and have a 10-foot space between them. That's all it means. I would submit to you that that doesn't make sense in this particular situation. To do that, it would be less efficient in a number of ways. Economical, certainly. Efficiency, as far as the energy goes, yes. And functionality. There's no reason I would submit to you to construct 2 identical buildings and have 10 feet between them on the interior of this parcel. So we're not talking about limiting the square footage on the site. We're only talking about whether or not we can house that square footage in 1 building as opposed to 2. And I would submit to you respectfully that doing so in 1 building is not incompatible with the area and quite frankly makes sense under the scenario that I've laid out for you. So with that said, I would ask that you concur with the staff's recommendation and grant our approval to take this property from HC2 to HC2A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak for this? Okay. We have 2 speaker cards here, Carolyn Munster. All right. Can you please come forward? Now, you're speaking against?
I'm speaking against, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. I will tell you that I am the lot next door to this property. I'm lot 24. I've been there 40 years for this property's expanded. My first question is, when the zoning board went out to put this proposal up, they put the sign on the service road where this property that they're expanding is on Industry Lane. The lot on the service road does not connect to Industry Lane's property. The Industry Lane property is 2 lots, which gives them 200 by 330. They came in front of this board and built a fabulous office building in the front on Industry Lane. So the paper that shows how they're going to design this is a little confusing because it sort of implies they're going to go from the service road to Industry Lane. My question is, first of all, you're 100% cement. You're sitting 10 foot away from my property. And when you built this new office or whatever they're calling it on Industry Lane, they had to set back 12 feet then. So this plan that you're looking, that was designed, sort of shows a straight line and doesn't imply that next door on lot 24 is a residential commercial property. I'm zone C2. I've been on this property 40 years. I continue to live there. I'm 74 years old. I've been flooded out by this properties constantly. I've been in front of this board, whoever was here at that time. There's numerous complaints lodged about why. I wasn't sure whether they were going up. They have two buildings they just built in the middle. It doesn't clearly say to me what they're taking down, but I did want to draw your attention to the lot 7 that faces the service road. Has about 6 units, and they use that strictly for an address. What they're building on is lots on the Industry Lane properties, facing Industry Lane. They don't choose to use those addresses. I'm a little confused because all the doctors who have invested in all the medical, Fairway Medical, and all the doctors who are back there, Saratoga Oil Company, next door to them. Why the need for more additional building? They don't have any available handicap parking. Their parking right now comes in and parks right in back of the new building between two mini storages. So almost I would tell you that everything you're looking at is cement or metal building. And of course, lot 24 takes the blunt of the entire water. Now, I know I'm not here for water, but I'm here to tell you that I totally oppose this in every way possible. I've been in front of this board, meaning St. Tammany's board, with several proposals to do things on my land, and totally rejected, told no, can't do it. But seems like this particular, and I'm not sure because they're coming into Liberty Bennett on the service road, but then B&B mini storage presenting it to you. So just like, what are we doing here? They just got the okay to redo the front of the road, on the service road for that lot number 7, and back up that brick facade, dress it up. And I will tell you that the building that sits alongside of me tilts their entire roof to drain on me. It might be 10 foot wide. There is a drive that's there, according to the plan, you can make a turn, can't make any turn. Once you pull in, you're in there.
Ms. Munster, let me stop you right there.
Okay.
You're getting into the planning side
Okay.
of this and not staying on the zoning side.
Okay, well, I have no idea where they're going with this. You know, I understand the 35,000 square feet. I understand that they have no trees on that property, and I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the sign warning everybody what was going to be proposed tonight was not on Industry Lane. And that is my understanding where their building is going, on lot 20, 23 and 22.
Okay,
So lot 7 is on the service road.
all right.
So therefore, I oppose it. I want to go down and tell you on record that just prior to this being presented, I had a meeting with Pat Bister, Marty Gould, and the parish's attorney, complaining about the same thing I've been complaining about constantly. And since Katrina, it's been overwhelming with problems on this property and unaddressed. Thank you very much. If I have time for rebuttal, I'll take it.
Okay, you will have rebuttal.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Are you Sherry?
Yes, my name is Cherie Munster, 67-169 Industry Lane. I reside at 19375 Slimmer Road. Family property for 40 years. I like Matt Bennett. He's nice. His grandmother was nice. I don't particularly care for his parents. You give them the approval, and they do what they want to do. They don't go by the rules. Every day's a different ball game. At this present time, I decided to sell my inheritance for $925,000 if they'd like to be interested in buying it before they make this move. And we'll be watching everything they want. I just hope that you'll understand that we feel very bad that every time that you give them something, they do what they want to do, and we're the holding pool for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against on this item? I'll close the floor on the initial, and we'll go to rebuttal. Thank you. Mr. Morone.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Well, Ms. Munster was right that the issue of water is not relevant here today, but I would like to say and be very clear about this, that we emphatically deny that there is any water whatsoever flooding her property from the Bennett's property. This is an allegation that has been perpetuated for a very long time, and I can tell you that the drainage system that they have on this facility catches every drop of water, whether it be on roofs through gutters, whether it's through catch basins on the facility, that brings all of the water subsurface to its ultimate discharge point. There is no water that is leaving this property and going on to Ms. Munster's property. She may have drainage problems, and I respect that, and I'm sorry to hear that, but it's not coming from the Bennett's property. That said, that has nothing to do with what we're here about tonight. We are here tonight on one question: whether or not the upgrade to this facility will be done in one building or two. I would submit to you that it makes perfect sense to be more efficient and more practical in the upgrades to this facility and putting the climate-controlled building on there, and it should be in one building. There is nothing that Ms. Munster said that would suggest to you, in my humble opinion, that there should be two buildings as opposed to one. The property was properly posted. This property runs all the way from the service road to Industry Lane. It's one parcel. It's not multiple parcels. Ms. Munster's property is zoned HC2, and that is not incompatible with what we're proposing as HC2A. As far as the lot coverage, as I mentioned to you before, whether it's HC2 or HC2A, it is exactly the same. We will meet those requirements. We will meet the requirements with regards to landscaping. We will meet the requirements that are applicable with regards to drainage, and setbacks. We will meet all of the applicable regulations of St. Tammany Parish, as we've always done on this site. One question: will the upgrade be in one building or two? I would submit to you that it should be in one.
Thank you, Mr. Morone. Ms. Munster, do you or the other Ms. Munster have a rebuttal?
I have a rebuttal, sir. Definitely have a rebuttal. Okay, clearly, looking at this plan, you will see that Lot 7 is not attached to Lot 22, two different parcels. I'm still very confused as to what building they plan to do this with. Were they being so kind to take down the long-use building that butts up to my property, that the entire roof is hanging, that's been there the longest? Which building are they redesigning? Is it in the center that they just built? I don't have a specification on that. I will tell you that the only trees that are on this property and landscape is in front of their new building, which is not even on your drawing. And I will tell you once again, the water that I get on my property not only comes from this property, it comes from the service roads property, and it also comes from the property on the side, and it was held up for over 15 years because the parish neglected to pull up a drain pipe. And recently, Mr. Marty Gould got it up, and that was part of my meeting, and it took 2.5 years to get that okay from the engineering department. So I'm well aware how important it is to have a service road address. If you think that way, I will tell you that ask anybody around who is Carolyn Munster, and they will tell you Industry Lane. Ask Fairway Medical, Industry Lane. Doctor's office, Industry Lane. Sue Osborne, Industry Lane. So all I'm really saying to you is, which I think I found out tonight, they're not going higher up. They're wanting to do climate control, which I've been waiting for. I'm very confused why it's B&B mini storage when it clearly says it's Liberty in the front of their property. And when I called the state today and looked up the transfers, it's a corporation that doesn't go under Liberty because they've taken in so many investors and they keep constantly merging. They have a lot of other property they could do this on. So I object, and I will hope that you will consider this. Check with Pat Brister, check with Marty Gould. I have more documentation, take you 8 hours to look at it, for all the water as it flows on me. They're aware of it, and your notes in Mr. Hand's office will clearly state the complaints I've had of the water repetitiously coming on me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I know you're going to give it to them because they always get what they want. But I just hope that you will continue to make sure that they're going by the rules, like everything in St. Tammany, OSHA rules, water rules, drainage rules, everything that's needed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we've heard both sides on this. I want to close the floor to the public. I will bring it back to the commission. Mr. Davis, I don't know.
Paul?
You or Bill, which one of you?
Dave, yes, sir. The current buildings that you have on the property now, what is the total square footage of those current buildings that are on there now?
Between 30 and 35,000
Okay,
approximately.
so basically you're asking for the double the size of the property. You know, I generally don't have a problem with this. I know the other young ladies that were up here talking about, again, this is a zoning issue. It's not a planning issue, and I appreciate your zest and everything on this. As far as, Helen, do you know anything about the signage not being posted on the frontage road and Industry Lane? Or did we post it just on frontage road?
As far as I know, it was just posted on the frontage road.
Okay, which is part of the property.
That's correct.
So these three individual lots are one parcel.
They are one parcel, that's correct.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Matthews?
One question.
Yes, sir.
The actual address of this piece of property for post office and the parish, is it on Industry Lane or is it on Frontage Road?
Service road? It's on the service road.
Okay. So therefore, that's why the sign was posted. Helen, I have one question for you. With a building of approximately 70,000 square feet and the property being approximately 76,000 square feet, are they going to have any trouble meeting the parking and setbacks and the like?
Well, they will definitely have to submit the site landscape plan meeting all parish requirements.
Okay. But it appears that you all are going to be able to put 70,000 square foot building on a 76,000 square foot piece of property and meet all those requirements?
We are confident that we can do that, yes,
Okay.
Mr. Matthews.
I don't have any problems with this, and I move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Matthews to approve, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, item 7. Zoning case 14-09-080. The existing zoning is HC2 Highway Commercial District. Proposed zoning is I2 Industrial District. This is .577 acres. The petitioner is Vincent Eberye, and the owner is Vincent Eberye. That's probably not the right pronunciation either. Parcel located on the north side of Ben Thomas Road, west of US Highway 11, being 37407 Ben Thomas Road, Slide L, Ward 9, District 14. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with commercial uses. Staff does not have any objection to the request, considering that the site is currently developed with an office warehouse and also abutting I-2 industrial to the west. At this time, staff would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Eberye, are you in the audience? Vincent Iber? Okay, don't see anyone coming forward, so we'll bring it back to the commission. Ron?
Yes, I'm familiar with this area, and yes, there is already in place an I-2 facility that was basically, for lack of a better term, grandfathered in, but the change from Highway Commercial 2 to I-2, not I-1, or I think that's a big jump, especially when you're looking at a .5770 acre of property. Maximum amount, square footage of a building can be very limited. I like to postpone this, or deny it, however we do it, to, until next meeting, and with the community residents get together and discuss it.
Okay.
And I so move.
To table?
To table?
Postpone?
Postpone?
I'll second it.
To postpone.
Second.
Okay,
Postpone.
we have a motion by Mr. Randolph to postpone. Ms. Casabon, you seconded it? Okay. All right, so that's gonna stop discussion. Please vote on the motion to postpone.
Yes, please don't. Like saying, "Give me a goddamn thing," and
Motion carries to postpone. Okay, item 8, zoning case 14-09-081. Existing zoning is A4, single-family residential. Proposed zoning is I2, industrial district. It's .606 acres. The petitioner is Vincent Ivier. The owner is Vincent Ivier. Parcel located on the south side of Ben Thomas Road, west of US Highway 11, Ward 9, District 14. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the site to be developed with commercial uses. Staff is not completely opposed to the request, considering the presence of office warehouse on the north and east side of the site. However, considering the small size of the parcel and that it is abutting a residential on one side and I-1 industrial zoning may be more appropriate. So at this time, staff would like to recommend denial of the request.
Okay, thank you. All right, we don't have anyone, I don't believe, in the audience to speak on this. Ron, this is the same.
Table it too.
Yes, sir, and I again would like to postpone this item as well, because this is even a little more dramatic, if you will, from residential to I-2.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Randolph.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Before we vote on this.
Okay. I don't have a second yet. So.
Hmm?
I don't have a
Yeah,
second.
we have a couple other lights. I have a question, staff. On the previous, a little more than half acre, you recommended approval. On this piece of property, that's 6/10 of an acre, a little bit better than half. You recommend denial because of the small size. And then across the street, there's another piece of property that's coming up, and you recommend denial, and it's a much larger piece. I'm not sure I understand where the staff is going on these.
Well, Mr. Chairman, on the north side, you already have a building that is to be used as an office warehouse, and it's abutting commercial. It's also abutting I-2 on the other side. However, on the south side, and I understand your comment about the size, which is of the property. On the south side, it is currently zoned residential. It's abutting a parking lot.
So although you make the comments of size, it's not really the size of these pieces of property that are affecting your recommendations,
More or less.
more or less? Okay. I'm still not sure I understand the differentiation.
Was that a motion to table? Did you make a motion to table? Postpone?
Postpone.
Excuse me,
Okay,
new
and we had
terminology.
some lights on, and I wanted to give everyone an opportunity.
Okay, well, we didn't before.
I don't have a second.
Do we have a
on it.
second? I'll second it. I'll
Okay,
second
we
it.
have a motion and a second to postpone zoning case 14-09-082. Please vote.
it's twice.
I'm sorry.
Hey, Dave.
I'm sorry.
David?
Zoning case four.
It's twice I've had my light on to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right,
If we could hold off just a second.
okay.
In years gone by, there was a standing policy on the zoning commission that if a petitioner had an item like this, and they were not present, that we would bring it up and vote it down and put the onus on them to take it to the council on appeal. Okay? I sat through that in many hearings when I was on the other side. And I guess I'm having a problem with people having petitions in front of the commission that we wind up tabling and tabling and tabling, and they don't even show up.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Pug, and I do agree with you in that we need these folks to show up. Mr. Randolph is familiar with this property, and he's asked basically for a community meeting.
He asked a question a while ago, should we table it or deny it? He didn't say have a community meeting. He said table it
Well,
or deny it.
part of his
Is that-
discussion was in there to have a community meeting, I believe. Did I hear you right, Ron?
Yes, sir, but, you know, if it's to table because of the legitimacy of what Mr. Pug is talking about, I don't have a problem with tabling it because it is drastic.
Okay, well, tabling is postponing, okay?
Oh, okay.
The difference, Ron, the difference is if we deny it, then they have a waiting period that they have to go through, if I'm correct, Helen, and then they have to go back and reapply.
No, they can
There,
appeal to
there's
the
a
council.
10 days appeal period where they can appeal the case.
Pardon?
There's a 10 days appeal period where they can appeal the
Okay,
case.
But what I'm saying is, if we deny it, the petitioner, in this case, it's the same person, if we deny something, that person has 10 days, they can appeal it to the council. And if the council upholds our denial, then they have to go back and start the process anew.
No,
There's a waiting period, and they can go back and reapply.
If the council denies the request.
Yeah.
Pug, if we want to tell people that if you don't come before us, and, because I've got questions I wanted to ask on both of these things. And if the people don't come and we deny it, then they go directly to the council at the next council meeting, plead their case, just totally circumvent us, and get it or don't. If we deny it, what we've done is, if we postpone it, what we've done is, we've told them, you didn't come, you gotta come back next month, and then we can deny it if we want, if it's appropriate, and then they go to the council. We've given them an extra 30 days to have to sit on this.
Bill, I hear what you're saying. All I'm saying is we need to have some kind of a policy. If we're gonna table it, we'll table it for one meeting.
well, generally.
And that's generally what we do.
Yeah.
We have discussed this in the past.
We can only table, the commission can only table
Twice.
any given item on the agenda 2 times, okay? Now, if the petitioner, wants it postponed they go 3 times, I think, or well, they can have as many as they want, I believe. Is that right, Terry? Okay, the petitioner can have as many postponements as they want, but I can assure you that when it gets to the second and third time, this commission will probably take an action to deny it, okay?
Well, the problem I'm seeing with it is that we've got another case that we're gonna hear in a little bit, and there's a
Yep.
lot of people that took time to come out here tonight.
Yep.
For this one. And it's an inconvenience for these people to have to come back time and time again, because this person, and it's not the same in this case, but if this person doesn't show up and we table it, then the people that were opposed to it, they would have to come back and come back and come back. And I just don't think that's proper. For what it's worth, that's just me.
Okay, thank you, Pug. All right, we have a motion and a
Mr.
second.
Chairman, just a point of clarification going to Commissioner Lawrence comment. Mind you, when someone says they want a postponement, ceases all discussion. If it's second, we must vote. However, keep in mind, the commission does not have to grant the postponement. You can deny the postponement, which will kill it, and then you can bring up either an approval or recommend to deny the original petitioner. So be mindful, just because we put a motion on the floor for postponement, based on the history of the commission having someone speak to us, which is the public forum, we can deny that motion and thus move to a second motion.
Okay, thank you, Dave. All right. We have a motion and a second to postpone zoning case 14-09-081. Please vote.
We're voting to postpone.
That's correct. Okay, we have a vote of 6-3, so the motion carries to postpone. Okay? All right. Next item, item 9, zoning case 14-09-082. Existing zoning is A4 single-family residential and I2 industrial. Our proposed zoning is I2 industrial. This is .46 acres. The petitioner is Jack T. Hopper. Owner is Highway 36 Industrial Park LLC, parcel located south of Eden Street, east of Industry Park, west of Nursery Street, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with industrial uses. Staff does not have any objection to the request, considering that the site is directly abutting industrial uses zoned I2. Note that the site was zoned M2 intermediate industrial before the comprehensive rezoning. Staff recommends approval.
Is Mr. Hopper available?
Jack Hopper, 21449 Marion Lane, representing the owners.
Would you care to make any comment as to why you would like to make the change?
No changes, just here to answer questions if you have it.
Would anyone else care to speak on behalf? Anyone else care to speak in opposition? If not,
Come on up.
please come up to the podium, state your name.
My name is James Davis. I'm president of local homeowner association out there, Beetle Nursery Homeowner Association. Well, Mr. Hopper want to build a place on Eaton Street. We got one of our residents back here right in front of her house. That particular piece of land, Mr. Philip Willie built a house there. His daddy owned the furniture store on the end right there. We voted on that a few years ago. He built a house, put a swimming pool in the backyard. It burned down. And we had another lady had a mobile home there. It's residential. Eden Street is a dead end. We've been getting with Mr. Sharp about another way in and out of the subdivision, which is Audrey Heights. Now, we went to sleep when they put that industrial park there. It's sitting right in our backyard. I've been out there 38 years. I think the lady where they want to put the house, she's sitting back here. She's been there 40 years. All that was residential. They industrial, like I said, we went to sleep. They put them right in our backyard. At nighttime, I come outside, I can still hear a beat of beer at nighttime loudly. So we're a residential area. We don't need any more industrial in our neighborhood. I don't know where Mr. Hopper lives. I know he wouldn't want it in front of his house. But it was already there. We went to sleep on. Big old buildings right in my backyard. And we still don't have the right one way in and one way out. It's a dead end. Audrey Heights is there right behind us, one way in, one way out. No big trucks or anything could come up that road, they can't turn around. So we don't need as I said, we didn't know about it until our president, he's sitting back here, found it on the computer. So we went to sleep. It's in our neighborhood, residential neighborhood. We do not need a big building or anything put right in front of her house, and it's got a residential house right on side that land. So we request that y'all deny this for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. We have another person, Adrian Laurent.
Yes, Adrian Laurent, 21262 Camellia. Excuse me. Just like Mr. Davis was just saying, we had come before the council before with L&E's Furniture Store, and they wanted industrial. And we didn't knock against commercial because it was on the metered highway. Now, this particular piece of property is between two homes. Now, they come in 5 blocks into the neighborhood, and you have retired school teachers in there. You have school board people that's done retired in there. We have a lot of elderly that's in there, a lot of handicap, and we have enough in there. And this is all residential in there. We like to try to keep it that way because, like I said, we have elderly people, retired people, and it's already got more impact in there. Now, this industry had another piece of property that come up in there. We didn't kick on it because they already had access to it, and that one more little piece, we said, well, they're already in there, so we just let them abut to that fence that's in there. But immediately across the street is all residential. And we just hope that you guys deny this because we said in the past when we come through that we didn't want any more industrial in there, and I don't see how they're talking about putting any more commercial. And thank you.
Thank you. All right, rebuttal. Mr. Hopper.
In '09, when this was previously approved, there was no proposed building change or no additional building. There's no additional building plan now. It's just in an effort to bring it into the property that abuts it, which is the last building on the right-hand side of the street. There's no proposed separate building with this. The only proposed at the time was an expansion of that building. That is not now the case. And the access road that is adjacent to this property, they have no plans to do anything with. So there's no creation of another roadway into the business park.
All right.
And without bringing it into the industrial park, it's landlocked around it. All we're trying to do, since the owner is the same, trying to bring it in as one piece under the current ownership.
All right, thank you. Mr. Davis, Mr. Laurent, do you have rebuttal?
I have some copies that Mr. Laurent pulled off of his computer showing where the land is and how he want to put the line. I don't know if he planned on building something or not, but once you approve someone, they can always change their mind. But this is in the middle of a residential area. Like I said, the lady lives next door to where the land is. She's handicapped. You know, and but whether she's handicapped or not, they're trying to put too much industry in our neighborhood, right? As I said, the industrial park where he's talking about off Highway 36, where Arkin is, right down the road from Beat Beer, we went to sleep on that because they right in the back of people's yard in the neighborhood. Audrey Hike, they just put out there, the Federal Housing Project, they should have put 2 entrances, but they only have 1. Eden Street is the only way in and out. And we've asked Mr. Sharp if they can come off 36 for another entrance to come in. And I'm not sure how many apartments back there, but it's a lot of people there. And as I said, Ms. Perry and her husband been there about 40 years. I've been there 38 years. That land was a home. Will Philip Willie built a big house there. It burned down. It was residential. And as I said, I got the copies here. He got photos from the taken from the plane, that's how you looking. It shows you Eden Street, shows you Spruce Street, it shows you where the property is. And as I said, it's right across the street and right on 5 of residents who live there right now. It's 4 acres that Philip once had. Last people living there, the lady died and her husband, and they had a mobile home there for a long time. And the property been empty since then. All this was a part of Mr. Willie, who owned the furniture store, his son and all that over the years past. But it's always been residential. And as I said, when we see a yellow sign coming up right now, we come out to see what's going on, because we don't do that, we go to sleep, and next thing you know, it's stuff in our neighborhood that shouldn't be there. So it's got stuff out there, and we have a lot of children out there. It's got about 12, 15 buses come through that area every day to pick up kids and drop them off in the evening. And we don't, like I said, it's residential, and we don't feel like being slapped in the face every time they want to put some injury within our neighborhood. And our neighborhood is predominantly Afro-American. We have white, black, Hispanic, everybody live there. But they shouldn't just throw stuff in our neighborhoods. Bad enough they got the industrial park. It's right in our backyard already. We don't need more stuff there, or whatever the plans may be for the future. I got some pictures if y'all want to see where it is.
Thank you. Mr. Ront, do you have any comment?
The only comments I have is that, like I said, we did come before you guys, maybe not right here, but I know Mr. Matthew, he was supposed to check for us after they denied that industrial portion, and he said that he would be, as a courtesy, and I thank him for, he was going to go see what they already had in the industrial back there that might cause some problems. And the furniture store, that the guy that got that part, he was supposed to tear one of the buildings down, rebuild it, a building, and put store show cars in there. He tore the building down, but right now he has old boats and trailers that's sitting there. He lied to the council. And but we do not need any more industry back in there, no commercial. It's in there. Now it's like they want to starting on this end and fuse it on back through and double it like it is. We have, and I hope you guys just deny this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Ms. Casbon.
Yes, petitioner, when I hear what they're worried about, they keep saying how Eden Street, it is landlocked and so on. This particular property, though, would be, you use the Industrial Park Road.
Correct.
To get to it.
There's no proposal to make any other road into it.
Excuse me, I'm just asking questions. That this was part of the industrial park at one time, but it was in the comprehensive rezoning.
It dropped out at that point.
They dropped, yeah, we ended up changing it from that part. Is there a building on it now?
No, ma'am.
No, so it's just the land, it's part of.
It's purely a land issue and having it
This
tied
particular
with the
industrial
original.
park has AT&T, some of those business, and as far as I know, that's the road that we see going down the I-2 is the only road to it. Do you own, there would be no other way to
No.
get to this property except through the driveway
That's correct.
of the industrial park? Is any of that connected to Eden Street in the back?
No.
It doesn't go through, I didn't think it did, and stuff.
Martha,
Yes.
look at that easement. Show that to her.
To this one,
Yep, to Eden Street.
but this is how they're gonna add on to that one. I don't know.
What I'm asking, Ms. Casamon, is there's an easement off of Eden Street to this property, is that correct?
There is, and I don't even know who it belongs to. I don't think,
But
I
it
know
looks
it's
like
no
an
part of
access
this.
easement off of Eden Street, according to the survey we haven't
But
presented
whose
to us.
property is it on?
In the middle of the, it's not open now. It might be, I don't know who owns it, but it's not a road.
Well, it's an access easement. I don't know who owns it, but it's been granted. So I guess the question is, technically, if you could build something from Eden Street to this property?
It would have to be approved for a road, and it's not something we're pursuing. Ever.
Thank you.
Ms. Casbon?
That's it. I just wanted to know if this was going to be accessed, and it was, it is part, and was part of the original industrial park.
Okay, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Hopper.
Yes, sir.
The Highway 36 Industrial Park owns everything west, right? The I-2 directly adjacent to this is owned by the same individuals?
Yes.
So basically, all you're doing is
Every,
asking...
everything both sides of the street, all the
Right.
way to the end from
Okay,
36.
so basically, you're just asking to put this small little half-acre parcel and attach it to that.
That's it.
And then within that same complex, you won't be using this drive access on the right-hand side?
The rear access to Eden Street?
Right.
No.
I have a problem with that. My problem is you have A4 on all three surrounding sides. A4, you have residential all around your sides there. And I think with this little, and I think the reason that we made this A4 in the first place is because of that one reason. You know, I mean, if the entire property from Eden Street all the way back to the NC4 was trying to be changed to I-2, I might consider that, because you still would have residential on one side. But because this little enclave you got coming out, I just don't, and plus it's such a small parcel, it might be better to go ahead and just leave it as a residential area, have the individual use that 30-foot assessment, put their own street in, and sell it as a homeowner's property. That's my opinion of it.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't know who owns the easement. I don't know whose property it's on. It's not part of this. We have no control over it. And
Mr. Matthews.
had Mr. Laurent contacted me, I did try 3 times over the weekend to get to him. Nobody's answered my calls.
Mr. Hopper, you say you don't know who owns that, but it appears that it must be a recorded easement to have been put on this survey map. The surveyor found this easement, and it's a recorded easement, and clearly it's for this .46 acres, because it comes down and leaves you an entrance into this .46 acres. If we change this zoning to I-2, there is a house immediately between this piece of property and Eden Street. We would in fact have surrounded this house by a road going to this .46 acres, the 46 acres, and the I-2 to the west of it. I just can't see surrounding this poor house with all of this. Plus, there is A4 all the way around it on 3 sides of this .46 acres. There just doesn't seem to be a good reason to put additional I-4 in the middle of all this A4, and I move to deny.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to deny. Bill, you have any further comments? No. Okay. Mr. Davis, I know that you've been standing up and trying to get my attention, but understand that Mr. Hopper was responding to questions from the commission, okay? I wasn't ignoring you now. I want you to understand that. Okay. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to deny. Please vote. Yeah. Who's not voting? Oh, there we go. Okay, the motion carries to deny, 8-1. And Mr. Hopper, if you disagree with us, their appeal cards are there on the thing. You can appeal it to the council. All right, item 10. Zoning case 14-09-083. The existing zoning is A3 Suburban District. Proposed zoning is A3 Suburban District and MHO Manufactured Housing Overlay. It's 40,000 square feet. The petitioner is Armand G. and Patricia P. Mendoza. The owner is Armand G. and Patricia P. Mendoza. Parcel located on the east side of Trapp Street, south of Francis Street, north of Bobby Jones Boulevard, being lots 15 and 16. Hillcrest Country Club, it's actually Ward 10, District 6. Am I right there, Helen? Correct. Okay. Staff.
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured homes. There are many mobile homes in the immediate vicinity. Staff does not object to the request and recommends approval.
Thank you. Are the Mendozas present? All right, please come forward.
My name is Armando Mendoza.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm coming here to, I have 2 acres in.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
I have 2 acres in Hillcrest, and I want to move to my mobile home to my place, because I have a family, and running in a mobile home park. So I have 3 kids, and I want to move to my place to have a better place to grow up my family.
In the country.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Casabon.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Casabon to approve, seconded by Mr. Willie. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries to approve. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming. All right. All right, item 11 is postponed. Okay. And the text changed, we're gonna catch those all together. All right, next item that we're gonna take up is under old business, CP 07-09-157 PR. Use is a
Mr.
retail
Chairman?
facility over 20,000 square foot. This was postponed, and I'll need a motion to bring it off.
If my notes are correct, we've already postponed that one for next month. Am I right?
No.
No?
This one, or you and this one?
Yeah.
This is the one with the Department of Transportation attorney. That's the reason why it was postponed.
All right, what did I do, skip one here? What are these people?
This would be the next one.
Okay, all right. Well, that was postponed indefinitely, though.
No, they were going outside to discuss.
Okay, all right. Excuse me, I got confused with my notes. So we're gonna take up item 11, which I believe that's what everybody's here for, okay? It's zoning case 14-09-084. The existing zoning is A3 Suburban District. The proposed zoning is A4A Single Family Residential. It's 6.2 acres. The petitioner is David Miller. The owner is Dennis Miller Young and David P. Miller. Representative Darling Design Homes. Parcel located on the north side of Destin Street, west of Albert Street, being square 242, town of Mandeville, Ward 4, District 7. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. At this time, staff sees no compelling reason to increase the density of the zoning, considering that the site is surrounded by A3 zoning property, and staff would like to recommend denial of the request.
Okay, thank you. We have quite a few speakers. Mr. McGee, you have any comments?
Yeah, I wish I was a daycare in 6th Ward. Once again, I don't want to give this up without at least trying one more time. And we are requesting, as did the staff, to table this matter. And for these are the reasons. Number one is this is the first hearing. Number two is we didn't know that there was this much opposition to this zoning request. Number three is we would like to have a community meeting that Mr. Davis said he would organize or participate in. And number four is no matter what happens tonight, we're going to be at the council on an appeal. I believe that Mr. Groby would be interested in us having a community meeting. We want to do whatever we can do. We want to be responsible citizens in whatever we can do to try to meet with the adjoining landowners, try to see what their concerns are, and try to see what we can do to alleviate those concerns. The property is going to be developed one way or another, and we don't want to ram anything down their throats. We want to try to talk, be reasonable, and just like lawyers do, mediate, try to figure out a reasonable solution that both parties can live with. And so for that reason, I'd once again ask that the the commission table this matter to allow us to have the community meeting, allow us to have drawings to show what our proposal is with regard to this zoning request, and just to save a lot of time and effort to going up and getting remanded back to the council for a community meeting if that's what's going to happen. But I just don't think it's appropriate to move forward with this until we have a chance to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGee. Charles Lesh. Wait a minute. Excuse me just a minute. Does anyone else wish to speak on this in support of it?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
are we speaking on the postponement or on the project? Because
On the project.
all we've heard is a request for postponement.
Right.
And
From Mr. McGee, who's representing
Right.
the owner.
And I would then move to postpone. And if we get a second, then we can argue the postponement if we're going to do that.
Mr. Chairman,
I don't think
if
we
it's-
can,
if it's your desire to listen to discussion, as the chairman, you have that right.
Okay. All right. So what's the will of the commission? Mr. Matthews would like to make a motion to postpone, but listen to the opposition and the,
And discuss the motion to postpone and see if we can get past that. If we can, and we don't want to postpone it, then we'll move forward. Mr. McGee can come back up and argue his case.
okay?
Mr. Chairman, may the parties be heard on the issue of postponement?
That's what we'd like to do with it. And we need a second and we need to move.
Okay. Just a moment.
Excuse me.
All right, we got a motion to postpone,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. Davis, and we will have a discussion on the motion to postpone. Now, Mr. McGee, you've had your opportunity. You would like to have this postponed.
Right, I've said what I...
Okay, all right. Mr. Lesh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Charles Lesh. I am here as a resident. I live at 544 Tanager Drive in the Maroney Trace subdivision. I'm here as a board member of the Maroney Trace subdivision homeowners association. Let me speak just briefly with regard to the issue of postponement. Earlier this evening, we had that issue, and we were postponed to the end of the agenda. Of course, we were pretty close to the end of the agenda anyway, but we have quite a number of people here, as you know. In fact, with your permission, I'd like everybody from Maroney Trace who's here opposing it to please stand up so we can see how many people from Maroney Trace are here. And there's also quite a number of people from the adjacent subdivision, Monterey. Would the folks from Monterey please stand up? And so we have a huge number of people here who came this evening on the belief, of course, that this would be before the commission this evening. So we would very much like to oppose any further postponement and have the matter presented this evening. And of course, I'd like to reserve my time with regard to the merits of the matter at a later time.
Okay.
And also, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm just one spokesperson here. I don't want to hog the microphone. There may be others who wish to speak on the issue of postponement as well.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on the issue of postponement? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name.
Lavelle Blitch.
Okay.
I'm a resident of Maroney Trace. We represent 162 lots, and we came prepared this evening for however many people were here and for the issues. And I'm sorry that the people representing the issue did not come prepared, but we're going to ask that you all hear us out. And we would ask that after you hear all of what we have to say, that you proceed with the staff's recommendation and deny the request.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Come forward and state your name and address and fill out a speaker card, please.
I have a speaker card filled out. Michelle Rosales, 640 Goldflower Lane, Monterey subdivision. I'm opposed to postponing. I have children. I know what postponing is. It's because they don't want to hear the truth, and they're hoping we're not going to return. Mommy and Daddy stick together when we tell children they have to do what we say they have to do. I don't believe they came prepared. I agree. And I think it's sad that we speak in numbers because we're concerned about our property, and that we're going to give him, one individual, the right to say, I don't want to hear it. I think it's very sad. We took time away from our families, as so did you. I have children that I have to go home to feed, and I think we're here now. Let's take care of business tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this, on the issue of postponing?
Corey Marvel, 209 Bunting Drive, Marigny Trace. I represent the board and I'm president of the Homeowners Association. I concur. I took time away from my office. I work uptown New Orleans at Toro. I left work 2 hours early to get here on time. I, as well as everyone in this room, came prepared. He presents that their plans are not going to develop this as highly as the rezoning would allow. None of us have seen that recommendation or that plan, so I ask that you please do not postpone, and let's hear what the commission has to say.
Okay, please fill out a speaker card and turn it in. Yes, sir.
My name's Dennis Wilkins, 431 Greenfield Drive in the Monterey subdivision. I'm the board president for the Monterey Homeowners Association, and I request that we do not postpone this. On July 2nd, the petitioners petitioned for the zoning change. They've had 60 days to get with the boards with Marigny Trace and the boards with Monterey to discuss their plans. In that 60 days, they did not take advantage of that time to discuss the plans with us. It wasn't until the fact that they saw that there was a large outswelling against their plan that they want to, oh, well, let's talk. They had their 60 days to talk to us, and they did not. So I encourage the board to hear us out, and let's vote on this matter and not postpone it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the issue of postponing? Okay, I'm going to close the floor to the public. We have a motion on the floor and a second. We did get a second, right? Yeah, Mr. Davis, okay. To postpone this until next month's meeting. The commissioners, I need you to vote. Please vote. We have 9 nays, no yays. So we're going to hear the case tonight. Mr. McGee, okay. We will hear your side of it.
In spite of popular belief, I am prepared to go forward with the reasons why we think this is appropriate. And I noticed from the opposition that the room is filled with Marigny Trace and Monterey subdivision residents. Isn't that interesting? Both of those subdivisions have A4 zoning classifications. These are supposed to be the people that are surrounding this property in question. The parish's own map shows that before the 2025 plan was adopted, this parcel was A4, much like all of the surrounding property that you can see in the shaded area. A4, under the current zoning regulations, allows for 4 lots per acre with a minimum of 90 feet front. Because of the unique shape of this piece of property, it's a square, it's not acreage that's got a fluid boundary. The only way that we could get to the A4 density, like Monterey and Marigny Trace, was to go for A4A. because that allows 6 lots per acre with a minimum of 60 feet front. We're seeking 4 lots per acre under the A4 designation, which would yield 24 units on that 6-acre tract. The density is one that's convenient. When you've got it, you're happy. When you don't have it, you don't want anybody else you don't want anybody else telling you you can't have it. But that's what you have here. Not in my backyard. They don't want this property developed. They don't want anyone to have the same density that they have in their subdivision. But once again, the purpose of the postponement that we requested was to try and talk to these people, find out what their problems were, see if we could address it. We only want what they have, A4 density zoning. And like I said before, they left their jobs to come here. They're going to have to come to the council meeting. They're probably going to have to come back here again. They're going to have to come to, or probably going to have to come to a community meeting. That's their choice. We're here. We're ready to go. We'd ask that you consider the request, grant it, and I'll answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on supporting this subdivision? Okay, I'm going to go to the other side, those of you that are against. I just want to caution you, you've got 10 minutes for everyone who wishes to speak. Okay, you will have a 5-minute rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. Am I correct in hearing that you are proposing A4 rezoning and not A4A?
No, that's not correct. The only way we could get to the A4 density was to request the A4A because of the configuration of the land.
So you are requesting A4A?
A4, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, Charles Lesh, on behalf of the board of the Maroney Trace subdivision. I'll try to be as brief as I can. We have 161 homes in Maroney Trace. I believe that we are uniformly opposed to this. We would like to thank very much the staff for their review of the matter and recommendation of denial. In addition to the 1 square that the proponent wishes to have the change made, I understand that they have an option on a triangular area adjacent to that they would, at some subsequent date, undoubtedly request a similar change. So that would roughly increase the amount of space that they wish to develop by another half at least, possibly a doubling of it. So we would be faced with an incremental increase in the density of the properties nearby. Our primary concern is the effect on our property values. We believe that any increase in the density of the residential area adjacent to us would have that effect on our properties. I understand that there are, in addition to that primary issue, there are issues with drainage, there are issues with additional traffic and congestion generally. One of the residents has given me pictures of some of the drainage canals in the immediate area, and I understand that could be a problem.
Let me stop you right there just a moment, okay? This is a zoning issue. It has nothing to do with planning, drainage, traffic, or any of that, okay?
Very good, sir. In any event, we are opposed to it. We wish that you would uphold the recommendation of the staff and deny the requested change. And I'll submit the rest of the time to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
LaBelle Blitch, Maroney Trace. On the corner of Albert and Destin, there is a property that is on 3/4 of an acre. In Maroney Trace, the properties are maximum 3 to an acre, minimum 2 to an acre. Monterey is a similar development with the minimum width on a lot 95 feet. With the A4A cluster development, you go down to 60 feet, which is going to increase density and reduce the square foot value of those properties. And as a board member and on behalf of the subdivision, our interest is in maintaining and/or increasing the value of our properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Once again, Dennis Wilkins, 431 Greenfield Drive, Monterey subdivision. There are numerous reasons to be against changing it to 4A. As the petitioner said, we're against any kind, we don't want it to be developed. That's not true. We're A3, A4, leave it A3, A4, so that if we're 2 to 3 houses per acre, let them build 2 to 3 houses per acre there. If that's the case, I don't think anybody here would have an objection to it. The objection is, and they said, well, we're only going to do, we can't do 6 per acre, we're only going to do 4. That's what they say now. We don't know what's going to happen later, okay? Because we've all been in situations in which, oh, well, that's not how the project was supposed to be. And it ends up, you know, well, there's nothing we can do about it now because it's zoned that way, okay? Leave the zoning the way it is. Let the developer develop the land the way it is now. What the developer wants to do, you're looking at 1,000 to 1,300, maybe 1,500 square feet homes that are going to sell for $120,000 to $140,000. Whereas all the homes surrounding him are 22 to 2,800 square feet homes with home values of 250 and above, all right? So not only are you going to take these homes and bring their values down, but you're also going to decrease your property taxes for the entire lot, because these homes that are being sold for 130, 140, they've got the 80,000 tax exemption, so they're only going to pay $50,000 of property. Our property values are going to go from the 250s to 270s, and they'll come back down to the 220s and such. So eventually, you're also going to lose the tax base on it. It's a bad idea to sit there and let it go to another classification. There was a reason in the past that the boards in the zone, that it was zoned the way it is. My suggestion to you is leave it the way the prior boards, and maybe some of you who have voted on it previously had voted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Yes, sir, come forward.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll make this quick. I know we're running out of time.
Please state your name.
My name is Greg Miller, no relation to Mr. Paul Miller. I live in this area and have for a number of years. And as Mr. McGee states, this property is going to be developed regardless. The only reason for this change is to maximize the density. And I don't see any compelling reason, and I don't think any of us see any compelling reason to make that density any more than it has to be. It's unreasonable. And finally, that's right. We've known that this meeting was going to take place for 60 days. And Mr. McGee, as an attorney, of course, seeing the wave of displeasure with regard to this, would obviously want to postpone. I'm glad that we're not postponing, and I hope very much that you will vote to deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? We've got about 2.5 minutes left.
Just take a moment. Joseph Prinzo, Marigny Trace. The petitioner has made the suggestion that the only way to utilize the property was to request an A4A zoning. We are original owners of the property there since 94, 95. We saw the original footprint provided by the initial developer. On that footprint, Morganza Drive, which is the street on which I live, continued through the questioned property, meeting the original square footage averaging 3 homes per acre. So I'm curious, because I didn't have the opportunity to lay it out, I'm curious to see why the petitioner couldn't provide the same type of footprint. Additionally, he's identifying Albert to run extended through the 90-degree turn in the road. My property borders the proposed extension of Albert Street, as would 3 other homes. So now I have a home that will have a road adjacent to it, or the backs of homes perpendicular to me. I can't win either way. I suggest to the commission, to the board, that we revert back to the original footprint advertised by the original developer of the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, if I might just add also, the bottom line is it's economics, obviously. The more homes we build, the more profit we make. That's great. I hate to see the economic concept benefit 2 people, the property owner and the developer, as opposed to the hundreds of families that live there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I don't see anyone else that wishes to speak on this. Do you wish to speak? Yes, sir. You've got about 30 seconds. Please state your name.
My name's Chris Jansen. I'm on Albert Street, Monterey subdivision. I'm concerned as anybody else about property values, but what I'm most concerned about is we have 5 bus stops on Albert Street. The street is an old farm road. Adding 100, 150 cars down that street a day, it's going to be unsafe for the kids. There's no sidewalks, and that street is very, very narrow. You can barely fit 2 full-size trucks going that road. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now, we're going to go to rebuttal, okay? Each side has 5 minutes. Mr. McGee.
I appreciate the candor of the opposition. They need to know, though, that regardless of whether I'm an attorney or not, if you don't know that anyone's opposed, which I didn't find out until just this week, that there was one gentleman who had called Mr. Groby. His name was Mr. Miller. That was the only one he'd heard from. I figured, come tonight, talk to Mr. Miller, see what his concerns are. Well, you see what shows up. I didn't hear anyone from Marigny Trace or Monterey say that their subdivision is not A4 density. We simply want what they have. That's all that we're asking for. The density in A4 is 4 units per acre. In order for this property to be able to get that density, we had no choice but to ask for A4A. That's the only way that we can get 24 units on that 6-acre tract. Now, there was another comment brought up about the square north of there, and that's not before you tonight. But that particular piece is surrounded completely by A4 density, and it's adjacent to this parcel with the exception of the street that goes through it. So once again, we just want what they have. I think we're entitled to it, A4 density, A4A to get us to the density that we need for that piece of property, just by the configuration of the land, and we'd ask that you grant the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to point out that although we may be zoned A4, in fact, in in Marigny Trace, we have 2 or 3 homes per acre. That's the density that we have, the actual density. So regardless of what the zoning is, that's what we have. And although Mr. McGee says they're only asking for the same thing, they're not asking for the same thing. They're asking for A4A, which would permit up to 6 homes per acre. And although they say they're only going to build 4, there's no way that we have any assurance of that. Thank you.
Thank you. We're still in the rebuttal phase. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to mention that if you look at the map that we have, that you all have, Casting Oaks was developed by the same developer that also did Maroney Trace. And they also have 3 houses per acre in the first portion at the end of Casting Oaks, and the remainder of it is 2 per acre. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in rebuttal on the against?
You know, quite simply, Mr. McGee has actually, they only want what we have. If we're A4, then give them A4. That's it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Joseph Prinzo, Maroney Trace. I just wanted to take a moment, and if you folks want to share a look at this, I had the privilege of the opportunity to take a Google Maps photo. You guys are welcome to this. You can see that those parcels of land are completely surrounded by our subdivisions and the size lots that we described. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak in the rebuttal phase on the against?
My name is Doug Gramagos. I'm at 760 Monterey Drive, and I just want to echo the words of our president. Leave it A4. You can get enough houses that way. They don't have the infrastructure in that area to support what's being proposed. And I hope you gentlemen and ladies can consider this. Thank you very much.
Okay, if you've not filled out a speaker card, please do so. Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against in the rebuttal phase? Okay, I'm going to close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Ms. Casabon.
Yes, looking at this, in this particular area, I'm glad we did hear this tonight, that it is a matter of density. And I concur with the staff that there's no compelling reason to rezone this to A4A. I'll make a motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny by Commissioner Casabon, a second by Mr. Drum. Any further discussion? Plug?
The only thing I'd like to add to this long discussion is that no matter how we vote tonight, in all probability, this is going to be appealed to the council. So you all need to be prepared, one way or the other, to attend the council meeting. Okay. And having said that, and listening to the debate, there's an obligation on the part of the commission to protect the people that have invested their life savings in their homes. And therefore, I concur completely with Ms. Casabon's motion.
Mr. Davis.
Yes, in all fairness, when Commissioner Bill and I went ahead and made a motion to postpone, the reason for it is to give the advantage, not advantage, but give the availability of the developer or owner or lawyer to talk to his clients so everybody could meet together. That was the only reason. I never once thought that this density would be this significant. Obviously, at 6 units to an acre, it's pretty dense. There's no way I would have granted this as 4A, just to let you know. But I was the one that was postponing it, only because that's probably the right thing to do, to give everybody a chance to discuss and get their viewpoints out. That was the only reason I believe that we made a motion to do that. If the individual, the lawyer, please, could you, please, Mr. McGee, would you please come up? You would not, I see that A4 would be appropriate for this area, obviously for the A4 area around there. And there's absolutely no way you'd make a recommendation to downgrade to A4 and to up to A4 from A4A.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but my point was that the A4 density, 4 units per acre, the only way to get to it is to go to the A4A. That's
Yeah.
the 24 units. That's
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that your property won't allow you to do that properly.
Right, exactly.
But because of that, if you would make the motion to change to A4, I would grant that, or I would make a motion to approve that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
Okay.
Davis. I appreciate that. We'll consider that.
Mr. Matthews?
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
you keep saying that you have to have A4A to get A4 density. There's nothing on here that explains that. Can you
Yeah.
explain how you need A4 density, A4A density to get to A4?
The configuration, and if you look at your drawing, there's a survey attached. 506.2 feet front on Albert Street.
Okay.
All right, if you take the A4 density and do 90 feet front, which is the minimum, you get five lots. If you do 83.7 feet, you get 6. So that's what we couldn't get it with A4 because you have to have a minimum of 90 feet.
Okay.
To get the 6 lots, that's actually, the way we've got it figured at 6 lots, it's even less than the 24, it's 18. And that's why we did that, because the only way we can comply with the front footage requirement is to have it less than 90.
Okay.
But still only 18 lots under that configuration.
Okay, so what you're saying is that if we were to grant A4A, you're only going to put no more than 24 lots, which is A4.
That's correct.
Okay.
And in all likelihood,
there is-
18.
And I'm going to ask our attorney, but I believe there's no way that if we grant the A4A, that we can hold him to 24. Is that right?
That's correct, unless there was a deed restriction. Of course, the parish does not enforce deed restrictions, but the deed restriction would have to be done voluntarily by the owner, and it would be in favor of the neighbors in the existing subdivision.
Which is the whole point behind the community meeting, was to talk about those things and try to come to some consensus.
Well, I guess really that was the reason I made a motion to postpone, so we could talk about having a community meeting and possibly come to that kind of resolution.
Right.
It appears that that's, from the look of the audience and listening to the audience, that that consensus would never occur.
Right. I understand. I don't disagree with you.
Well,
I don't disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
I think your observation is accurate.
So, you know, the idea of having the community meeting, which generally is a very good idea, and we can work things out amicably, possibly, rather than contentiously, ain't gonna do it in this time. If we would grant you A4, that won't help you. Is that correct?
Well, no, I didn't say that. I didn't
Okay.
say it wouldn't help me. I just don't have the authority to commit to that at this
Okay.
point in time.
All right.
Not to say that it wouldn't be something that we
So-
would be willing to do between now and the appeal.
Okay. Then I'll have to go along with
I
the rest of
understand.
the commission.
Thank you for your candor, Mr. Matthews. Appreciate it.
Mr. Manella?
Based on some of the statements that were made by the two homeowners groups, am I correct in that though those subdivisions are zoned A4, the density is 2 or 3 homes per acre, not 4 homes per acre? Yes, sir, that's correct. And have they been completely built out?
In Maroney Trace, we have 162 lots, and we have 161 homes. I believe there is one vacant lot.
In Monterey, we have 126 lots, and we have 125 homes. One lot's owned by the resident that lives next to it. But there is a little bit of confusion on our part as well, because the posting at on Albert Street and the paperwork here says that that the change is to go from A3 to A4A.
Right.
So are we A3 currently, or are we A4, or what is that area right now?
If the question is to verify the zoning of the abutting parcels to the north, from the map that I have here, it appears to be zone A4. However, the parcel in question is currently zone A3.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have Mr. Davis.
Yes, I'll make a motion to deny A4A zoning. Oh,
We've
sorry.
already got a motion and a second. All right. We have a motion on the floor
I'll call a question.
to deny the A4A. Please vote. Motion to deny carries. Mr. McGee? Yes. You know what your next step is? I know what to do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's let these folks get a minute to get out of here. Well, I'm a little bit cool, but, you know, that's the reason I had to go through this.
They lied to me when they said these meetings were short.
Huh?
They lied to me when they said these meetings were short.
Well,
They told you that?
Oh, God, they did lie to you. You're way too gullible.
well, this is one of the longer,
This is the longest I've been.
well, but this is one of the longer meetings. Because, well, we had this one here and, okay. Please clear the chambers unless you have a case coming up. And those of you that are filling out speaker cards, please do so, and Kathy's down there to pick them up. Okay.
I understand, so when is the next council meeting?
Yeah.
First Thursday.
It's October.
All right. We're going to go back to the page 1 of the agenda. Item 2 is zoning case 14-08-075. This is a text change. Ordinance to amend St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1, zoning, Section 6.01, Plan Unit Development Overlay relative to open space and major amendment to PUD. Staff?
Yes, this tax change was presented to you last month, and I think that we are here tonight maybe to clarify basically the definition of open space, where we had a definition under the PUD and a definition under the the list of definitions. So here we're suggesting to amend the definition of open space to add the portion that would be related to the PUD overlay. And also, we had a request regarding, on the second page, regarding the processing fees, where now we're referring to the Parish Code of Ordinance, which lists all the processing fees and fees that are related to the parish.
Okay. All right, Mr. Matthews.
Helen, just one question. What's the thought on referring any change of less than 10 lots to the BOA rather than back to the commission?
Hopefully, I will answer your question, which basically how I came up with that is I did a research nationwide, and this is basically what is the common number of lots to go to either another board or to be addressed as a major amendment to the PUD. Now, the reason why we're bringing this up as well is within the past, I would say 5 years, is that we had requests for a major amendment to the PUD that would apply to maybe 1 or 2 lots. Basically, a homeowner was trying to make the house fit on a piece of property, and they would be requesting a major amendment to the PUD that would apply just to 1 parcel. And the Board of Adjustments is, when they look at a variance request, is to see, well, is there a hardship or not? So in this case, we suggest that if there's a request that is being done for 10 lots or more, or if it applies to a section of the board of the PUD, then it's a global request that affects more than just 1 residence. If it affects less than that, then it should be addressed by the Board of Adjustments, and the Board of Adjustments should look at it as, is there an issue with that particular lot in question?
Okay, so the idea is that if it's less than 10 lots, which means 9 lots or less, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, then the Board of Adjustments would look at it with the hardship as one of the criteria, rather than us looking at it strictly as a zoning matter.
Correct.
Okay.
However, if the board wished to reduce that number of lot or increase that number of lot, it's up for discussion.
No, I just was wondering what the thought process was
Sure,
here.
absolutely.
And I don't disagree with that. Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Helen, I do have some concerns. I mean, on the first page of this, you have open space, and minimum of 25% open space is required for all PUDs. The second page, the major changes of the PUD, number 3, a cumulative reduction of the total of the overall approved acreage of open space by more than 5% or below the minimum. I'm a little confused there. Why would we say you have to have 25% of open space and then allow somebody to say reduce that amount by 3% without coming to us? That's what I'm interpreting this to be.
Because the minimum required is 25%.
Okay, so you're saying if they had like 35%, if they decided to come back in and go to 25%, 26%, 30% to 26%, we would never hear about it, correct?
If it's less,
That's 4% less. So we wouldn't hear
Yes.
about it, and that's fine. But it can never go
Correct.
below 25%.
it can never go
Okay.
below 25%, but also
Okay.
it's the original 25%.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that's
So,
the way.
in other words, it cannot go to 30 and then 35 and then
Right.
32 and then,
Right, okay. And the second point is, item number 4 under open space C. No more than 50% of the required open space shall be satisfied using limited use land. Let's say I had a 400-acre PUD. 25% open space is 100 acres. No more than 50% would be 50% for limited use land and the other 50% for the actual open space. But then you, right after that, say 2 acres of limited use land are required to satisfy 1 acre of required open space. I'm a little confused in that.
We're referring to land that is inundated by water for a period of 4 months per year. So in other words, we're allowing, if you have a pond on the
Okay.
property, we're allowing that pond to use half of the acreage of that pond to be used towards meeting that minimum of 25% of green space. So in other words, you couldn't only have ponds covering the entire property or
No, I
covering.
understand that. Well, what I'm saying is with a 100-acre green space required on a 400-acre site, okay? You agree with that?
Yes.
Half of it could be the pond, correct? No?
No.
So you can't, what you clearly say, 50% of the required open space can be limited use land.
So
And the
if you-
limited use land shall mean the land is inundated by water for a period of greater more than 4 months within each
if you have if you have 100 acre of green space,
Right.
and if 50 acres is used for pond, only 25 acres can be used as green space, because it's half of what what is inundated at least 4 months out of the
Okay,
year.
I was just getting confused by the 2 acres of limited land use are required to satisfy 1 acre, that's all. Thank you.
All right. Carla?
Thank you. Carla Hernandez. I'm glad that you guys got to ask the questions first, because some of this stuff that I was confused about, some of it I'm still confused about, let me tell you, because the answers, I think, say that the wording should, need some additional work here on this, and I would hope that maybe you all will defer this another 30 days. Let me just tell you some of the other concerns that I have. First, she mentioned the processing fees on this. The word processing appears in this section 1 time. So I'm curious, I'm assuming that that's what processing fees are then you're applying to, the one word, the one sentence that says this are the fees for processing. Am I correct, or are we talking about something else now, besides just the word processing? In this section, the word processing appears 1 time, and there's a fee associated with it. So I'm curious, is that what we're talking about, that is going to be the fee that you're referring to here?
But the processing fees are required under all requested zoning change. Now,
That's true, but
now
the word
we're-
processing appears, like I said, again, 1 time in the section. So I guess I'm confused now as to what you refer to as processing fees, if the word processing appears, in a line that says processing fee is such and such.
Yes, the processing fees are referred to in the Code of Ordinances. They're listed in the Code of Ordinances.
In this section is what I'm referring to.
In section, in this,
Well, I'm wondering if in fact the processing fee that appears in this section is the processing fee that's referred to here, or are we talking another generic term which was changed apparently from what existed here, which said that the director of the Department of Development would in fact make the determination as to what this fee would be for the processing, as opposed to it being a finite fee that appears in this section, which again is this one fee that, or the word processing appears this 1 time. So
Carlo, I think if you look at the Code of Ordinances, section 1-0212.063, correct me if I'm wrong, Helen, that is a list. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. If you look at the Code of Ordinances, and I won't repeat that, that list the processing fees.
yes, the processing fees that are referred to as for the zoning
Okay.
change.
Under that section, there is a list of things called processing fees with dollar amounts for certain things. Is that correct?
Yes, but that
Okay.
particular,
So-
yes, correct.
So, all right, so what I believe they're saying, Carlo, is that the developer shall pay the processing fees that are listed in this Code of Ordinances. I think that's pretty clear cut, and, You know, I like the developer being able to go to the code of ordinances and seeing very clearly what they have to pay. I'm very much in favor of, you know, the developers or any business people knowing before they get here what they're gonna have to pay. And I think that pretty clearly states that.
Okay, well, if you would, please indulge me after the meeting, and I will show you what I'm referring to. And apparently, you and I have a difference of opinion as to what
Clearly.
quote, quote-unquote processing is referring to here. Okay, in any case, moving on. Last time I also suggested major changes. It struck out the use, bulk of significant buildings and structures, presumably meaning, and the explanation was the use of land was on towards, I guess, the second page.
Page 2 of 3, item
Number 2. And just as an example, there are some PUDs that have no underlying zoning. A good example of that is the I-12 and 1088 PUD. That PUD has no underlying zoning in place. It did have, and only recently when we went through this, have some, I guess, wide range of uses, more than any series of land uses that I've seen in a long, long time. In any case, so I'm wondering why the use and bulk is being struck from this, because what they had suggested as an example for their use is that, you know, these are the type of uses that we would like to have as part of this thing. Of course, it could change, yes, okay, but if it does change, why not have it come back to the commission? Now it's going to be done, if you approve this, administratively. So the public will never know that, okay, where they, you know, chose to have, you know, these 5 buildings here with these kind of uses on the thing. Now, we don't have to, we won't know that this has changed now, that they might have 6 or 7 buildings there with different kind of uses as opposed to those that were, you know, discussed on this before. So, I would hope that you will leave that in. The other thing about number 3, the location of open spaces, that was one that you said that you guys don't get to look at that. But I mean, it seems to me like I've got to see, you know, what was proposed for open spaces before here in PUDs. And now, I guess, if the, you know, through the process, if the PUD was, as presented originally, now had open space, let's say centrally located or going in these different directions, that now administratively, if this is struck, if they want to make a change, let's say they want to put it at one end of the development, that now the public will never know that, because it will be done again administratively. So I would hope, again, that you might hopefully consider leaving that in, you know, open spaces. That is, you know, it's important to many people, I think, especially if they're buying lots or, you know, building homes in a PUD, they want to know where the open spaces are. And if they're told one thing one day, and now, you know, whatever, 6 months, 2 years later, it turns out that administratively it was changed, no public hearing was held on the thing, because, again, now administratively it can be changed. So I would hope that that's something else that you will consider leaving out. The rest, I think, based on the other comments that I've heard already, I won't say anything more about that, but it's just that I think some of the language can be improved on, and I would hope that maybe another 30 days, and I'll be happy to work with the staff if you want my suggestions in writing as to what could be done with regard to improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public wish to speak on this? All right, I'll bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews.
I'd just like to make one quick comment on the question of the use in bulk. I believe under the zoning classifications, we have already said what can be the uses of these buildings, and for them to change the use from one permitted use to another permitted use is really not germane, although the location of significant buildings and structures may be germane to us. The location of open green spaces, I don't know, that might be important. In most cases, when we look at where green spaces are, we don't seem to delve on that too much, but that could be something that could be important, and maybe we want to put that back in. And if anyone else has any other suggestions, I'd be willing to listen to them. But other than that, I think we have a fairly good ordinance and ought to approve it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may address this, this issue here. The location of open space will always be addressed, and if you look at number 3, is if there's a request to reduce the total green space by more than 5%, then it will address the location of open space. When we look at the requests that we've had within the past 5 years, it's a very slight request of reduction of green space, where it's sometimes, less than 1 acre that is being affected. But it's a very small area. Now, if you're talking about a reduction or replacement of green space in a particular area, it will be addressed under that 5%.
If they have 10 acres of green space and they move it from one side of the development to the other,
then it will
no reduction.
Then it will be addressed under the use of the land. Because the land had to be used somehow. If you're moving the green space from here to there, then that green space that was there was going to be used for something else.
Okay.
So then
If
it will come
that's-
back.
okay,
It
if
will
that's the
come back.
interpretation that
It will come back in front of you because
we're
the use.
changing the use of the land within that subdivision by moving the green space, then I don't have a problem.
Correct. If you have the use of the land that was green space here and they want to develop residences on it and move it elsewhere, then the use of that particular portion of land will be affected and it will come back in front of you.
Then if that's the staff's interpretation, then the staff will bring any change like that back to us.
Absolutely.
All right, any further discussion? All right, I'm looking for a motion.
I gave you a motion.
Did you? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Pardon? Yeah, I guess.
I didn't interpret that one.
All right, motion carries, thank you. All right, next item is zoning case 14-09-076. This is another text change. Ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, Appendix C, Unified Development Code, Article 2, definitions relative to community homes. Staff?
The objective of this proposed text change is to allow for the parish definition of community homes to be consistent with the state regarding the maximum number of persons to reside in a community home. At this time, we have a maximum of 6 people, and what is requested here is to increase to a maximum of 10 people, which would be consistent with the definition of the state. However, considering that the state used the term shelter care home, staff would like to suggest an amendment to the proposed ordinance to change the parish term community home for shelter home, and to maybe change the wording of the suggested ordinance to incorporate the 10 residents and to change the wording of community homes to the same term of shelter care homes.
All right, thank you. All right. Anyone wish to speak on this? Bud? Bud? Okay. Carlo?
Thank you. You know, I guess what was just stated is not how I read this thing. It's still under the definition of community home. If the definition wanted to be changed under shelter care home, that would be one thing, but it's not. What's interesting is that clearly it does increase it from 6 to 10. I mean, that's pretty clear from that. And I'm wondering about I guess, I don't know if it's the second sentence from the top where it says that you will have no more than 2, I guess, 24-hour attendance. That was for 6. Now, if you go to 10, does that dictate then that you will have more than 2 24-hour attendants possibly on it would seem logical that you would have, if you have possibly up to 2 and then when I try to look that up on the thing, I could not, my mind, I could not get to that, so I couldn't find that on where. So I don't know if you have an answer to that, whether, in fact, some other regulations in some other section does say that, yes, you would have to have more than 2?
Well, this ordinance was drafted by council, and I think that, legal counsel here and
I can respond to that. If we're going, and I talked to Sidney today about this particular ordinance, and he suggested that we change community home to shelter care home, so that we're going to strike community home and change it to shelter care home. In the first sentence, it shall be changed to provide residential services to 10 or fewer persons who are disabled. So we're only talking about disabled persons. The next sentence would be changed again from community home to shelter care home that provide for 10 or fewer persons who are mentally retarded. And I think there's a recent legislative act that requires us to instead of using the term mentally retarded, there's another verbiage that needs to be inserted in it. Mentally challenged, I believe, is the correct terminology. Or developmentally disabled, that shall have 24-hour supervision. And I think there, instead of, I agree with Carlos, instead of there, as required by the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals, because this is a licensed facility by the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. So as far as the number of attendants, it will be governed by what their rules and regulations say. And then if we make those changes, we strike out the balance. So it says such a residential facility shall be considered a single-family unit, and just simply delete the rest of it. I think that's Sidney's recommendation. I think it clarifies it, and it'll redefine what a sheltered care home is in this parish to coincide with shelter care homes in the state.
So you're suggesting to where it starts out notwithstanding all the way through?
Correct. Just strike that out. And I'd like to get input. Mr. Shane, do you have any comments?
Yes, sir. Is there anyone else that's going to speak?
All right.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? All right, Mr. Shane.
Yeah. I turned the card in. Good evening.
What's your address?
Jeff Shane. My residence is Coop Drive, Covington, Louisiana.
Yeah, I believe that.
Tonight, I think I earned it.
We're all going to reside in Coop
I have newfound respect for those that are last on the agenda, but I've been last before. Good evening. I represent industry, and in particular, the holders of a license that have a shelter care facility. And my client and I are certainly a part of this legislation in that we had brought this to the attention of the parish and appreciate the work of Mr. Hand, Mr. Belisario, and others in looking at this issue with us. The concepts that Mr. Hand discusses are certainly agreeable to us. The one concern I have is that I believe that a shelter care home would need to be a subset of the community home definition, because community home, as per LARS 28 : and that's the, we need to look at 8.2, could in some instances be something different than a shelter care home. As I appreciate the practice of the parish heretofore, and Ms. Lambert can help me if I stray, I think that when individuals, companies, entities procure a license from DHH for what we will call a shelter care home, the parish has felt comfortable and confident that it could grant an administrative permit in the A districts, and I'm not sure about the E districts, but in the A districts that have as a listed administrative use community home. So, for example, my client gets a license from DHH to do a shelter care home not to exceed 10 residents. When we come to the parish has looked at it and felt comfortable that it fit within the community home definition that we have in the code. In our Unified Development Code, there is no definition for shelter care. So and these are not necessarily arguments against what Mr. Hannah suggested, but I think it'll help us get home eventually, one way or the other. So the thinking is that if it has consistently been interpreted to be a subset or be within the community home and give at least the possibility for an administrative permit, we thought we would clarify the community home definition by adding the suggested language. Because then if you go to, and then by way of example, if you take a look at 8.2, and for those of you that have a code handy, that's on your laptop on page 85. I'm just going to read to you how it's set up in the residential districts. Under A2, there is under A2, under section 5.0703, subsection J, provides for the possibility of an administrative permit for community homes. And it says as defined in LARS 28:477. So my only suggestion might be, I don't know that you want to exclude community homes as being a possibility for an administrative permit. I would think you might want to expand or clarify that community homes could in fact consist of or include a shelter care facility. It's kind of similar, though, to some of the discussions you've had earlier this evening. The caveats or the protections is that it's licensed, certified, and monitored by DHH. They're the ones that are going to establish the occupancy. That's why the amendment suggests not more than 10. They may look at a facility and say, look, we think you can only have 4 in there. They're the ones that are going to determine how many 24-hour attendants you need, depending on, let us say, the quality or the impediments that some of the residents might have. So now maybe I am suggesting perhaps a little twist to the language being thrown out, but hopefully to accomplish the same objective. I believe that the use of the word shelter care home is not a bad thing. I think 10 or fewer persons is a good thing. I think 24-hour attendance as required by DHH is a good thing, but I'm afraid if you take community home out of the definition altogether, we now would have nothing in the residential districts that would allow for the possibility of an administrative permit. Does that make sense?
It's correct, and then we would have to amend each zoning.
Each zoning.
So it's either that we would have to table this request and amend each zoning to change the term, or we can keep the same term and just refer to it in the definition.
Correct.
Of shelter care homes.
Yeah, I don't think Sydney was thinking of that. The complications it created throughout the rest of the UDC as far as the other zones, you'd have to go back and amend it to put a permitted use as a shelter care home in each one of them. So I tend to agree after listening to that we need to leave it as was originally proposed.
I think that certainly might serve everyone's purpose. I think if the shelter care home were a new use, if it had not been considered in the past to be a subset or within community home, I would fully understand a different form of debate, and maybe why we might have to go to each residential classification to determine if we think it's appropriate there.
Do we need a definition of shelter care home someplace?
No, because
Why?
because there is no reference in the residential zones to shelter care home. Even if we could abracadabra and make a definition for shelter care home, you would have to go back and amend each residential zone to allow a shelter care home to be an administrative use. Because shelter care has been considered to be likened to, a part of, something less intense, less onerous than a community home, I think your system's fine. I think you just need to amend the definition. And I think some of the thought that was put into coming up with this structure for the definition may have just been temporarily forgotten.
Well, under community home, we would have to put including shelter care homes?
If you-
And maybe give a definition there, what a shelter care home
No,
is?
sir, if you look at your definition now, it very clearly says only the underlined portion is being added. We are making it clear that your amendment would be consistent with your practice through the years, that notwithstanding the foregoing, if you come to us with a shelter care license, we recognize that you will be afforded the opportunity to get an administrative permit where community home is listed as an administrative permit in our UDC.
Okay, so it says, community home shall include the definition of shelter care homes as per Title 48.
Yes, sir.
et cetera.
And I think it's tight. I don't think it's wide open, and so it should not be abused. Quite frankly, it should make it clear and probably in accordance with not only your local, but state and federal law as to what we should be providing for those that need shelter care facility. And I think that's really the bottom line to all of this.
The need for this is obvious because we have both state and federal law requiring this. And as I understand from speaking earlier, that there have been 2 lawsuits over this, and the parishes have both lost and been required to do this. So I'd move to approve.
A second.
We got a motion and a second, Doug?
I have a question for council. And it's just for my information. A lot of the things that we do in the planning commission, when we start looking at the plats, they list the protective covenants that are pertinent to that subdivision, and many of them contain the phraseology that it will be a single-family use only, and others state that there will be no business within the development. My question is, if that subdivision were one of the A classifications, could this preempt that?
Preempt the restrictions
In
of the
other words,
subdivision?
preempt the protective covenants of the subdivision.
No, sir, I don't think so. It's very clear that if, I think that the law will allow people to live in subdivisions that have covenants, provided that they're not discriminatory as to race, creed, ethnic, and other considerations. But I don't believe that there's anything that would prohibit restrictive covenants that would take care of other uses. So I didn't come prepared tonight having researched that issue. I think that you should look at this as being a law that applies to all of the land, but then if people decide that they can enter into contractual regimes with regard to the development of the land, then that would be the way that they would limit or modify some of these uses. Again, that would be certainly your province and up to Mr. Hand's opinion.
Right, and the key is, so long as it does not come in conflict or violate federal law as far as discrimination. So you can't discriminate.
And I'm saying, suppose somebody came in with a sheltered home for handicapped people.
Yes.
Would that be discrimination if you said, you know, one of the reasons I ask is, I know of one instance where a minister lived in a subdivision, and one of the protective covenants said that you couldn't conduct any business. Now, the pastor didn't conduct very much business from his home, but he had a little office. And one of the residents in the subdivision filed a complaint, and he had to move his little office out of his home, okay? Because the protective covenant said you can't have a business.
Right.
Okay.
But you have to distinguish the right to conduct business or do commerce. That is not a recognized federal or constitutional right on a piece of property. Basically, the Fair Housing Act, which is federal legislation, and the jurisprudence and its progeny are the things that protect people's rights to do certain things in in this case, we're talking about residential settings. I think those are federal rights that cannot be abridged. The right, though, to conduct business, for me to have a law office in my home, that can be curtailed by a restrictive covenant, or for that matter, by zoning laws that say that this is going to be a single-family residential only, and you're not going to have what I call a third-party law office, meaning clients coming to and fro, secretaries working at your home, things of that nature. So I believe the legislation as crafted would accomplish many things for you, and I do not think it would abridge the rights that others already have under federal and state laws.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ron, you have a comment?
Just for clarity,
Excuse me for laughing, but I know what you're coming from.
the underline the underscored statement is just an addendum to really clarify the preceding statements. Now, the preceding statements refer to 6 or fewer persons. Should we change that or maintain the 6? Or should we change it to 10 as is prescribed in the underscored part?
I think you should leave it at 6 because that's referring to community homes, and there are community home regulations.
Okay.
I believe that, again, if you look at community homes being the umbrella, and if you look at shelter care homes being a subset or something that fits under the umbrella, I think it's appropriate to make the clarification and amendment, but I would suggest that your community home definition has worked great, and apparently there has not been a conflict.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion and a second? Okay, all right. We have a motion and a second. You've heard all the discussion. Please vote.
Yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, item 4, zoning case 14-09-077, text change. Ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, Appendix C, Unified Development Code, Article 7, Supplemental District Regulations, Section 7.06, Accessory Buildings and Structures, 7.0602, Boathouses and Boat Slips to increase the permitted use of boathouses. Staff?
This is a text change requested to amend item C, where no boathouses shall exceed, it was 20 by 40, and now would be changed to 7.5% of the area of the lot on which the main building is situated. However, after speaking with legal counsel, if I'm not mistaken, we agreed that it should be to a maximum of 1,600 square feet instead of whichever is greater.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. That was one that I had marked. All right, Mr. Matthews?
I'd like to amend this to delete under C, whichever is greater, to state whichever is lesser,
Okay. That's fine.
and then approve.
Second.
Okay.
Just a m-
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Dodd?
My name is Barbara Dodds, and I'm here as Environmental Chair for the League of Women Voters of St. Tammany. I would ask that an amendment be offered to accept scenic streams from the maximum and keep it on scenic streams as it has been for a maximum of 800 square feet. I think we need to protect our scenic streams from huge structures. A 1,600 square foot building is a house to a lot of people, and we don't need that kind of structure on our scenic streams. So I would respectfully request that we amend this ordinance to accept scenic streams from it and keep them at 800 as they have been.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. You've heard the request, Mr. Hand? Jeff?
Oh, yeah.
I think I turned to Cardi.
Yeah, you
You just
did.
want to be last, Jeff.
Well, I do. At least I'm not bashful about it. And I think I might be last, looking around the room. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell firm, and I represent actually multiple property owners that either are in the process or plan to build boathouses. So obviously, I'm in support of the legislation. I want to make sure that I understand the application of Mr. Matthews' amendment, if in fact it is approved, because I believe he was changing it to lesser. But I also, with regard to the scenic stream comments made by Ms. Dodds, I can't say that I'm opposed. I would ask you, though, to give some consideration to the following. I'm not sure that we should attempt to legislate what should and should not happen on scenic streams, only because there is plenty of legislation already in place that does that. And I guess what concerns me is that I believe that the focus of this legislation was to allow people to have a reasonably sized boathouse. And I don't mean a place to store some life vest and the igloo from one weekend to the next. I mean, this is a situation where, as you know, in many of these cases, these boat homes have a high value per square foot. That people fully finish them with kitchen, bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I would like you to consider distinguishing protection of our scenic stream for maybe a property right if someone can procure the necessary permit to build a structure either on the bank of a scenic stream. And really what this legislation is addressing, I believe, are structures that go out over the water, not over the land. Most boathouses are not slab structures sitting over the land. They're over water. And the classic application of this is probably going to be the lakefront, clearly, Lake Pontchartrain. It doesn't mean that it can't be on rivers, and it certainly doesn't mean that it couldn't be on a scenic river. But I'm not sure about, making the judgment that 800 square feet is an appropriate size, again, on a scenic river or a scenic stream. Because I think all of you know that, again, you have to have special permitting to do things in those areas. Extremely difficult to get permits. I believe it should be protected and safeguarded. I get worried about, though, if you start tampering with a legislative scheme that's already in place, has somebody really thought through all the consequences? But the purpose of me airing out this evening is not necessarily as it relates to Ms. Dodd's concept. It's more so to make sure that I understand Mr. Matthews' amendment, and I would appreciate it if he and or Mr. Hand or someone will go through the effect of that amendment sort of arithmetically to make sure we understand the lesser. Because if you had a parcel, and I think if the idea is 7.5% of X versus 1,600 square feet, I think you could have a situation where if 7.5% came to 1,500 square feet, but if that parcel were big enough for you to get a permit to put a 1,600 square foot home, I'm not sure that we want to restrict what otherwise code would allow you to get anyway, and that's what I'm concerned about. I don't know that the 7.5% should be used. I thought that the reason that the 7.5% had been added by, I assume, the drafter, either Councilman Ortiga or someone else, was to make sure that we had some upside limit on this thing, so that if it were a 100-acre parcel, we couldn't have a boathouse that would be 7.5 acres in size, which would be 7.5% of 100 acres. I think the idea, though, was that if it were a smaller parcel, that you could either go the greater of 7.5% or 1,600, which obviously doubles the size now and
But-
eliminates the dimensions.
But the way it is written, if you had a 100-acre parcel, you could have much larger than 1,600 square feet.
300,492 square feet.
Okay. So,
So what I think we're trying to say with the lesser is.
so the 100-acre, this
could only
amendment,
build
this
the
amendment would
1,600 square
protect
foot.
the 100-acre
He could build
analogy
1,600.
here. What happens though, I wonder, on a smaller lot, and maybe I'm tired and the math is,
Half acre. In other words, half acre gets us 1,600 square feet. So the lot's gotta be a half acre in size in order to get a 1,600 square foot.
If he's got a quarter acre, then the 7.5 applies.
okay, got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I obviously hadn't thought it through till you made the amendment, and that's why I thought, rather than not asking now
No,
and
that's
figuring out
that's cool.
tomorrow morning on the drive into work,
The question about the scenic streams, and I appreciate what you're saying, that to just throw that in there right now may have many unintended consequences. I would suggest maybe that, Ms. Dodd, you get with Mr. Hand or whoever and see if there are unintended consequences or are not unintended consequences, and maybe we'll come back and put that in at another time.
Well, Scenic Streams has allowed, maybe I need a definition of boathouse. My vision of boathouse is a structure protecting the vessel as it is docked at the owner's property. Now, there's another type of boathouse, such as in New Orleans along, I forgot the name of the street, where they have built.
West End front, yeah.
West End, where they have built structures over the water and the boats are generally underneath. And we have one out here at Chifuncta Harbor, is it? Out on Highway 22, there's such a development there. So maybe we need to differentiate between the two uses. One use is strictly to protect the boat, and there's a house on the property. And the other use is a house structure built over the water, as Jeff said.
What
with the
most of those
boat.
things are, and particularly like the ones on the lakefront, I believe there probably are a few people living in them, but most of them are places that are huge, open spaces and a kitchen. It's a party room, and that's what people build behind their house. I've seen those in many other places. They're all over Florida. So what you have is a boathouse, but on top of it, you have a recreational area, and then in front, you have a nice house.
Sometimes they call them camps, depending
Well,
on what type of stream
yeah,
you
some
are.
people would probably call them that, but some of the ones I've seen don't fit, in my impression, as a camp.
Well, my concern was that we're getting into a very large structure, and in scenic streams, which are very important to this parish as far as its, its tourist attraction is concerned, it would be entirely detrimental. And Jeff is correct that they, usually when you put a structure on a scenic stream, you do have to go to scenic streams for a permit.
Right, and I'll look at,
But I don't think there's any definition, either in our code or in scenic streams, for this type of structure.
I'll contact the Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Department, which controls the scenic rivers
Yeah,
permits.
I sent an
And the
email
process.
to Keith Cascio asking him about it.
Okay.
But I haven't heard back.
I'll
And
get
the other
together and
gentleman
work
in
with
Baton Rouge was out of the office
Okay.
till tomorrow. So I wouldn't have an answer
All
from
right.
him either. So I wish it would be a consideration when you do these kinds of ordinances.
And it may be by the time that it comes to the council, and we may have an answer.
I would hope
You
so.
know. I think that's it. Just move on it.
Call for the question. We need to vote, don't we?
Yes.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the amendment that was discussed on the, whichever is lesser?
Correct.
Okay. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Now, do we need to vote on the
Yeah, we need to vote on the ordinance as amended, right?
I move to approve the ordinance as amended.
Do I have a second?
Clear?
Do I have a second? Second by Bernie. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. We're gonna go all the way back to page 3. We got zoning case 14-09-085. It's a text change ordinance to amend the St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code, Volume 1, Section 7.01, landscaping regulations relative to adding a section to establish a tree bank program. Staff?
Okay, hope we're all awake for this last one.
Yeah.
So the text change for your consideration tonight stems from a need to offer an alternate form of mitigation for some specific instances in commercial development, where, for instance, live oaks are allowed to be removed from a commercial site, but the number of required inches for mitigation for those live oaks which have been removed don't fit on the developed site. In the past, what we've done is allowed for trees to be contributed to the Tammany Trace or local schools or parks. However, the Trace said, don't give us any more trees, and it's really pretty much impossible for us to follow up on the survival of trees that are planted on other properties that we don't have any control over. So the tree bank idea would allow us to collect payment per inch of mitigation, which would be reserved in a fund specifically dedicated for tree planting and landscaping in public spaces. It would allow us some flexibility in working with commercial developments in St. Tammany, but more than anything, it allows us to put the right tree in the right place instead of, you know, cutting down one 24-inch live oak and then stuffing a bunch of live oaks in a 10-foot buffer. It allows us to have some funds that can be used to plant the correct species of tree in a space where we know it will thrive. So the general objective, overall goal, is to responsibly maintain and manage the canopy of St. Tammany Parish, and the tree bank will be used as a last resort. It's not a license to cut. It's a way for us to first work with the landowner or developer to see if we can mitigate on their site after trying to work around any trees that are protected, et cetera. And as I said, it will be a last resort before we use this as a tool to manage the canopy in St. Tammany Parish.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't know who was first here, but we'll start with Mr. Hand. You got your light on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jimmy, Bill, whichever one of you.
I was first this time, John. I generally give it to you when you're first.
That's right.
I do have two questions. Under C, the fee expenditure, the third line, the first sentence, full sentence in that line, says projects that provide additional benefits. I think if we could clear up some discussion that we've been having, if we said tree bank projects, that would clear up any discussion as to which projects we're talking about. And then the last part of that sentence, it says they are encouraged. I think what you're talking about is that those type of projects would get a preference. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we say, instead of encouraged, runoff and erosion control will get preference? So that makes it clear that we're just not encouraging those, but if we have a project that provides no water quality, storm runoff, or erosion control, and one that does, the one that does gets the money. Make sense?
Okay, so how would you please explain which words you're
Okay.
requesting to change here?
Change projects to tree bank projects.
Correct, okay.
And the last two words in that, where it says are encouraged, just change that to will get preference.
Okay.
Or could we just say are preferred?
Well, if you say will get preference, that tells you that they're preferred and that they're gonna go up on the list
Okay.
as opposed to ones that don't. And as an aside, any trees you wanna plant in the rec districts, in particular rec district number 1, would be greatly appreciated.
Will also get preference.
I'll second that motion if nobody else has a comment.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. I got 8, where's 9? Bug left.
Dave, we're voting on the amendment,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
we'll come back.
This is on the amendment. So that, the amendment carries. I need a motion and a second on the,
Move to approve as amended.
as amended. All right, let's clear. All right. Come on, come on.
We don't
Motion,
need the language about Pelican Park in here.
all right, motion,
Just keep it.
motion carries as amended. All right.
Move to adjourn.
I'd like to thank, number one, staff, commissioners, for hanging in there. This is the longest meeting I think I've been party of. It's 9:29, and I understand the lights go out around this place at 10 o'clock, whether you want them to or not.
Just to decide, everyone, we've finally finished our new rules and regulations and procedures, and we should be getting those soon.
Yeah.